right, we are going live in 5. Yep.
Okay, great. Well, welcome to the Monday, March 7th, Select Board Workshop for Budget. We have a lot to get through tonight, so we are going to be going in order of our binder. Thank you, Megan. So we will kick it off. John, I don't know if you have comments to kick us off, or...
No, I mean, I think we had a great review, period of review. We had a lot of new members, both on the select board and on the budget committee. So there was a lot of, I think, first time around questions we had. And and obviously it's a very different view. So new manager, new take, new everything. But I think we're at a point now where we can go through this. I think we had some last minute information we had to throw on the pile Thursday night. And so, I think we're in a good position for, the 5 of you to make some decisions, hopefully, and get this, so by the end of this week, we have something that somewhat consensusly resembles a budget. So that's what we're hoping.
All right, thank you, and apologies for getting started a few minutes late. We had a session and we have all brand new technology so that we can do hybrid meetings. So thank you, Jeff Parker, for assisting with that, and we'll get started. So Megan, where will you send us first?
The administration's the first one, which is page 105.
Okay. Sorry, Denise, I thought you had a question. Any comments about administration?
I guess I wanted to sort of make a general statement, because I think as we've all been faced with this budget that is a 30% increase from last year's budget, and when I look at LD1, which I know there are a lot of reasons not to slavishly follow it, but we are $1 million over that number. And obviously we're going to try to get into the weeds here and figure out where we could perhaps sort of manage some of this budget, but it's very tricky, and obviously we don't know. I don't want to be in a position of telling a department what they need or don't need to do their job for the town. So I guess that's where I start to struggle is, and obviously we've heard about the 6% wage increase, and there are a lot of good reasons for that. I did look at some of the numbers over the years, and I think it's just important for us to realize that over the last 10 years, we have done wage increases of around 25% in the face of cost of living adjustments in the 10 to 11% range. So we have historically paid our employees above and beyond cost of, true cost of living inflation numbers. So here we are faced with, we know the cost of living adjustment was close to 6% by Social Security in September, and the CPI is going up a lot. And as we see with gas prices, this is all going to continue to increase. But that goes, it affects our town employees as well as our residents. So I really don't have, I just wanted to sort of make those statements that I'm concerned at the size of the budget. And I guess as we go through over the next couple days, maybe we'll find some places that we can provide some relief and soften that impact a little for our taxpaying residents.
I think to sort of go on the end of that, the last time I remember was 2008. And I think, Jonathan, you may have been part of that board. And
Just missed me.
I was the recipient of decisions that were made by the board.
Yeah.
And it was a difficult time, and the sentiment was, sorry, but make it work. So, it's just one of those things, and if we have to make a difficult decision, it's nothing personal. It's just what's in the best interest of the town and the taxpayers. And we know that there's a lot of things that have been overlooked for years. And we started by getting the Capital Improvement Committee back together, started having them look at things a couple of years ago, and we know that there's a great deal of things to do. And we didn't really put any constraints on Jonathan as we did other managers by saying, sort of use this as LD1 as a target. Not to say that we would have ever held to it, but we certainly would. That gives you some spending above what was last year's. But with inflation going to be 8%, and who knows where, And it, you know, we had 2 years, as everybody knows, of the pandemic, which we thought we were gonna be getting out of, and now we're into a situation now that is more costly than the last 2 years have been, in my opinion. So we do have to make difficult decisions, and I hope it's not taken personally with anything that's done. But that's why we're here.
It is, but I will say, I think the reason that we are here is because, not you, John, previous administration, we spent a lot of time going after the big shiny new things and not taking care of what we have. And as a result, we have buildings that are crumbling, we have roads and bridges and culverts that are washing out. We have things that had 5, 10, 15 years ago, we maybe had leaned in a little bit more, we might not be in this position. So I agree. Do I think that there's opportunity here? Absolutely. What I also want to make sure is that we are not penalizing the people in our organization for decisions that were made that were not their choice. So I want to make sure that it's clear that, you know, I do support the 6%. It's a tough environment. We have great employees. We want to keep those employees, and I think that it's very easy. It's the top of every one of these budget pages that says salaries. If we do not treat our people right, I could give John $50 million. He can't do what he needs to do unless we have the right people. And I think we need to keep that in mind. It would be very easy to say, let's go 3%, let's go 2%. Hey, we did 2% last year and people stayed and that was great. That's not the way, in my opinion, that's gonna work anymore. And I need to keep good people. So I would ask, as we think about this, that we think about that. We don't hold people accountable for bad decisions that have been made in the past, and that we let something fall into disrepair. That we have beautiful fields that we built that we couldn't let people play on because we maybe took that out of the budget. So believe me, I'm a taxpayer, we're all taxpayers. This budget hurts. I had sticker shock when I opened this book 2 weeks ago. And I've looked at it, I mean, if you look at my book, I've got notes, I've got, you know, I'm honestly thinking, you know, to Mark's point, what do we need to run the town? What can we lean in on to get caught up? Maybe it's not everything, but what can we lean in to get caught up? And then at the end of the day, what are maybe some of those nice to haves that maybe we can't do this year? And it's no offense to John, it's no offense to Megan, it's no offense to anybody that took the time and put this budget together. It is, what can we really do? And what in good faith can we go to our taxpayers and say, I'm sorry, I know maybe you didn't get a raise, I know your cost of living expenses are up, but I need you to pay more. So it's a hard balance, and we've got a tough couple of nights in front of us. And Jeff, I'm glad you've joined us from the budget committee, and I hope others are watching. You have a tough week ahead of you here shortly, but it's just, I think it's open, it's nothing personal, it's nothing personal against my fellow select board members here, and John, who's on Zoom with us tonight, but we've just got some tough decisions to make.
Just to tail that a bit, this is going to be another one of those things, this tax bill that goes out to Rockport residents, that just is another in a series of inflationary pressures where they have to spend more money. So that does work in the reverse. And even though we're trying to do that for Rockport employees, and I fully support it, by the way, when we're looking at other budget items that really need to be done, could they be done next year? Yeah, I think that's a good way to look at it as well.
All right, Eric, you're the only one who hasn't spoke. Do you have anything? You don't have to speak, but do you have anything?
Do I have anything? No, I'm going to let it go at that for now.
Okay. All right, well, with that, thank you, Denise, for kicking off that commentary. With that, Megan, we'll start with administration. Is that where we are?
Yeah.
Yes.
The 105?
105.
In the book, okay. My comment, I know in good faith effort, there was a request to do a select board stipend increase on this. I personally am okay if we did not do a stipend. I'm only 20% of that vote, but I think in these times, we gotta lean in where we can lean in, and I would not take offense to that if we did not do a select board stipend.
And having been the one that brought it up, I brought it up knowing what other municipalities and county governments do for their managerial staff. And the additional $500 was meant to be payment as a wastewater commissioner.
Understood.
And I'm fine, but if you want somebody to come do this in the future, you gotta think about making it, because there's a lot, as Helen would say, and Bill has said, if you're listening, there's a lot of hours that go into this. And I'm okay putting it back too. I just wanted us to be aware, and I was hoping we had some comparisons from other agencies, but, you know, I'm okay too.
But putting it back, won't it just take it off the revenue line anyway?
Some of it. So wastewater already reimburses a percentage, which is 12.23. So if you put it back to 5,500, I mean, we could leave the 1790 there and just charge wastewater a higher percentage, or you could reduce the 1790 in revenue to the 12.23. The other thing to consider when you're considering increasing things on the wastewater end, small incremental changes in wastewater have a much larger impact
Right.
than small incremental changes in this budget.
If I could just also add one piece to this, you know, I think that it's wise to go through this, and I'm not suggesting that every idea that we put in this budget book is perfect, but far from it. But it is a situation where the needs of this board have never been greater. Though we have cut back to once a month of your meetings, it's important. And I think that if you know, you choose not to, that's one issue. But again, this is a situation where I do think that you will see this again. And I would fully anticipate that the stipends would be part of our salary survey that we would accomplish this spring and summer and fall. So the kind of comparative data that Mark was looking for would be part of that as well. So perhaps it's easier to have that conversation when you have all those other towns.
And
laid
just
out.
so as people know, it has come to light, because we've talked about salary surveys in years past. It's come to light that the two previous administrations had not done that. And shame on us. So, but that is what we're tasking Jonathan to do.
Yep.
To be prepared for next December, to see where we are and whether we're legitimately where we are, or whether we need to make some alterations to the
No,
pay.
we were
because
told that they had
Right.
been done.
Well,
So
I know.
guess shame on us. I
Pinocchio,
guess we have to
you know.
believe what we're told.
But, you know, and that's why, because we do give a rat's about our employees.
Absolutely.
Right.
And shame on us, so. For me, anyway, I don't wanna lump the rest of you in.
Well, no, I don't, I just mean that if we're told that something's been done and we
Right.
rely on it, that's.
And there were changes made last year. I mean, there
That's
were
right.
select
Yeah. Did adjust.
individuals. I don't know if we ever truly understood what the towns were that was compared to. I know there was probably a handful of positions. There were some people that received some sizable increases as a result of that, but I think what we have asked for and what we need is a full gamut
And that-
of wage survey.
And that goes hand with the law enforcement and your public works, because their contracts are gonna be coming up.
Right.
And, you know, from nuts, soup to nuts, or whatever that saying
Stem
is.
to stern.
There you go.
Yeah. All right, any other comments on the administration, administration budget?
So I'm gonna change stuff in here as you make the changes.
Okay.
So are you reducing it to the 5,500?
Well, I guess we need a consensus on that.
I'm good with it, I was just bringing it up
No,
for,
I'm good with it.
I'm fine with it.
Denise, John, Strand? I don't know if we can toggle back and forth to John, but
And then on top of that, do you want to leave wastewater revenue at 12.23 or move it to the 17.90?
I wanna leave the wastewater, I don't wanna make impact to the wastewater.
Yeah, 'cause
To
then
your
we're-
point, we make a lot of,
12.
Because then we're gonna only have to deal with it on the other end twice as hard.
right,
Right.
yeah,
Level
yeah.
Keep it where it was.
Keep it
Got
where
it.
it was, yep. All right, any other questions, or Megan, anything else from you that we need to address in that particular section? Nope,
Not on my end.
okay. next up is
Town manager.
town manager.
Yep.
I have 2 points here.
Okay.
2565. How does that impact us if we go down to 10,000 on those accrued benefits? Does that put us way behind or further behind? I know we had that discussion at some other point, and
Yeah.
and it's scary to make that worse.
Yeah.
It actually does not. Go ahead.
No, go for it. No.
On page 69 of your budget, I put the post-employment benefits actually on page 70. So our estimated unfunded liability is 54,000 with this $10,000 being deposited. I could reasonably say that you could make it or even cut the $10,000 out. I don't think that you'll have, because we have 183,000
Okay.
in there.
Yeah.
So it could be like a 1 year reduction.
Well, I was concerned it was too low.
It's my understanding, and obviously we've not gotten anything from anybody, but, you know, there's a potential for a couple of employees to retire within the next year. And and maybe a third, and will we have enough in
So-
there to cover, if they all decide to get done tomorrow, do we have enough to cover it?
So on page 70, you'll look that I've already considered one employee's retirement, which happens to have the most
Yep.
vacation
Okay.
and sick time buyout. So I considered that already in there. So even with that taken out, we still have 183,000.
So we're in good shape.
Okay.
So,
Right, that's
still-
what I'm saying,
We
is
still
that
need to
if
plan though for.
yeah.
the unfunded liability is not gone, it's still there, but I think that it is a place that you could.
So we could make
So you
it
could potentially have another
5 or
10,000
or
available.
leave it at 10.
Right.
Or go to 5 maybe. I hate to put 0
Yeah,
Right.
I wouldn't want to put zero.
because that only puts us in a worse bind in the
Right.
future. But if working through the budget, we can get to the right
Revisit.
point, and then next year, when some of the other things have cleared, we can bump this back to where it should be, assuming all things equal. Yeah,
I mean, I'd be okay with putting it at 5, I mean, just to have something there.
yeah, I definitely would not be happy with
Yeah, I
0.
wouldn't do zero, but I would feel comfortable with 5.
Makes sense.
And my other comment, and I know everybody loves the newsletter, but we're doing it how many times a year?
6.
Can we change it to quarterly and perhaps make it a buy-in, like people need to like initial request and do it as an online thing to save money? I mean, we could send out one with the front page of the newsletter going, this is our last paper copy unless you request, and from now on it's online, and that would also encourage people to sign up for that program where you want to get people to sign up on the email for the notifications.
Right.
It could kind of be rolled into that and make it an online process.
That's an interesting idea.
It's not a bad idea.
I sort of agree. I mean, I appreciate that people love getting it, and I think it's a good thing to do. Sometimes I feel like the content isn't the most scintillating, critical stuff. I mean, I know it's important that dogs get licensed, but at $11,000, I mean, so I guess I think
So if we
maybe a
move- if-
quarterly
If we
would,
move to quarterly, I mean, I don't know if 11,000 divided by 6 is what,
Yeah, it's pretty, it scales that way, so you can,
so it's.
And
It
then
would drop to about 8,
1,800.
yeah.
and then if we reduce potentially the number of paper copies
Right.
and postage, right? Do we pay to
it's,
mail it?
yeah,
It's the bulk rate.
It's the bulk
rate.
Yeah. so we're
But
not-
even so, the postal service is in no better shape than the rest of
Well,
us.
right, it does give
So,
people the option. I mean, I wonder how many of those sit in mailboxes.
yeah, I
or-
get 2 because I have
Right,
a
so you
PO
get
box and a
two.
address.
Right,
So I
so-
You're
get 2.
important there.
But, and we know that.
that is.
But it is a good thought. I mean, I love the newsletter, but I think.
Yeah, I'm not saying eliminate it.
Nope.
I'm saying let's
Yeah.
change the process.
So instead of having an exact number, let's just knock it back to 8,500. I mean, there's 2,500 off of it.
Yeah.
It's, you know, you still have 75 to 80% left. Is that gonna be able to do it?
I think if we can change it to an online system, like,
Yeah, I mean, it's the time, I mean, it's either printing cost with bulk mail and it's time, right? Those are
Yeah.
the two big components of it. I think what I would say about the newsletter is that it fills the void that Village Soup and, Penway Pilot don't,
right,
right? It's the fact of the information that we don't get out to the news, that isn't being disseminated. And it was 10 years ago, or 15 years ago, or 20 years ago. So if we went back to say quarterly, you know, under that idea of 8,500, that would put us in a situation where, you know, we could hit the fourth. I think I'm nervous about the subscriber rate on the
well, I'm not
You know.
saying eliminate it, I'm just
I
saying,
know,
on,
yeah.
like, pick a date, make one, on the front page of the one, say, you know, if you'd like to opt out,
Yes.
we're gonna do it as an online thing. We can create an opt-out system, we can eliminate those from the label
When they'll
printing,
merge, right?
or is it a Rockport resident thing?
it's
I
a
don't
Rockford
know.
resident thing.
So,
So that's
That's why you get
challenge,
two,
but-
because we don't,
yeah, I know.
Right.
you know, for
Well,
2
I
months.
think if we just scaled it back to
Yeah,
quarterly,
for-
at least would start to help, right?
and
I
maybe
mean, that
around-
saves us-
Yeah, and if we need a fifth one, I think that it still would give you enough to do 5 if you had a major, if we had a major thing for an election period or something where we really needed to get.
Mark, what did you say, 8,500?
85, I don't know where I come with it, but
That's okay, no, that's, I mean,
It's about $2,000 an issue,
Yeah.
so times 4
1,800,
is
so, yeah.
8,000.
so
I
85
would be
should
good
cover
with
it then.
85.
Yeah, that's what I was.
Hey, making progress,
Yeah,
$2,000 at a
you know,
time.
listen, when we get to the 1,000,006 things, that's where we wanna take as much time.
That's
Yeah,
right.
and that's the thing.
All right,
isn't it?
Eric, were those your two?
Those are my 2
items?
points.
Okay. Anyone else have anything else for town manager?
Absolutely.
Oh, okay, ready.
One of the things I was looking at was the 4450, the contingency, that it doesn't appear as if anything has been spent out of it this year. And we're again asking for $10,000. Could that be brought back to 7,500 or 8,000?
The 10,000 is spent on social pinpoint.
Go ahead.
The $10,000 is spent on social pinpoint, which was that program that you authorized for the comp plan.
And that's already been paid for? We haven't
Just
gotten
got
the
the
bills?
bill,
Got the
right?
We
bill.
just paid it last week.
So
or the
what are you
before.
planning on doing? I mean, I look at the other ones, we got 44, 49, 8,500. What are you doing with the next 10 grand?
The next 10 grand goes into contingency, and that the items that you don't know, that you can't plan for, you have the 10,000 available. So for example, when we were first looking at the New Height group and whether or not, with our, not knowing that we would need additional funds, the initial thought from my mind was to use contingency to offset that. So it's really the situation where you fix the problem as it occurs, and it seems to be, we seem to find the problem one way or the other. It could have been the sewer pipe, but we found another place to pay for that.
And my last one is the 5717. I'm all for employee safety and performance, but we talked about last year, and I thought we had created a reserve to put the money in that we got back from Maine Municipal because of our good behavior, to offset or use in place of budgeting money for training.
That came in somewhere else.
So I use that to offset whatever's over and above what's budgeted. So
So
if you didn't want to
2268.
budget, right?
So instead of reserved, it got used for the overage.
Yeah, but it seems to me all right. I was trying to remember, it seems to me we got 6,000 or so back, but.
Thought it was 3. I read it somewhere.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I'm good.
So I had on 2540, and I only raise it because it's going to be consistent through all these
Yeah.
departments. So 30% increase in health insurance, I mean, so that's 30,000 an employee, right, for health insurance?
Yes.
Because there's just
Yeah.
two.
So,
Two
right,
people.
so that's the two pieces, which is the 90%, the move to 90%,
Okay.
and then it's the funding of an FSA.
Okay,
So that's 2 employees, but it's really 2 changes in policy. And again, it's that issue of retaining and attracting employees.
Sure.
And, you know, we can wait, but the further we wait, the longer we put ourselves in that tough position where we have 3 employees potentially leaving. Who's going to fill that spot? We just went about 9 months with a vacancy in Public Works. Even with good benefits, even with union leveled wages in terms of following a step and grade plan, which are things that we don't have on the non-contract side for our town employees, we weren't able to find someone. So the insurance piece is something in comparison to our neighbors, that we aren't as attractive. And, you know,
So we're not competitive when
Right.
it comes to health insurance and
Right.
the FSA.
Right.
And the
Right.
appropriate changes are prepared to be made when this passes for the personnel policy and all the other.
yes. So that's the 2 part of this, right? To have the budget discussion and then
And
adopt the change.
this takes everybody, not just the new hires from here forward.
It takes everybody but the people that are in the
Grandfather.
original grandfathered plan,
Right.
which is 100%.
2 people. I
Yeah,
think.
yeah, it's a handful of people,
Yeah.
yeah.
And it's 90% for the employee. Is it also 90% for the family
Family.
coverage?
Yeah.
What is just the dollar amount of the FSA?
2750.
Okay.
So the trick with that funding is that this is funding that account fully in the first year. And the second year, the only amount, the budget amount for all of those plans will be the amount used.
So,
So if everyone spent $500, we'd only have the budget number, and next year's budget will be $500
so
to fill that void.
Unlike an HSA, which would disappear.
So
You could use all of it, right? I
But
mean,
why wouldn't they all
why wouldn't they
spend
use it all? Yeah.
$27.50?
I mean,
They could, but they likely won't. I mean, in the situation.
I do.
That's
I
what
mean,
you
I'm
say.
just-
We use ours.
I
I
use
use
mine
every
all.
I used mine on,
Penny.
I mean, you remember you were also talking about employees with low deductibles too. So you don't have a lot of costs. You have your out-of-pocket, you have your out-of-network, you've got, you know, your crutches that weren't able to be counted as part of your insurance, braces, things that are outside the norm. So it's, for these types of plans, you know, I had this in Hope. We started this in Hope. I brought it with me when I went to Newcastle, and they wouldn't max out. They would use, you know, $1,000, $1,500, but effectively you're self-insuring, you know, and that's the beautiful part of it from a municipality side, is that instead of paying the health trust that ability, that 10%, the employee's made whole effectively by using it, and they have flexibility in that last 10%. So it hopefully it offsets in the employee's mind, and it allows some greater cost certainty in terms of increases, I believe, year over year.
So given the fact that we're potentially giving someone a 6% raise, and we're giving them another 10% in their health care, what's that translate into a raise? It must be 7-8% by the time you factor that in?
I
mean, I'm just-
haven't done that math.
Well,
Yeah.
see, that's something.
But the 8%,
But
well,
that's what
yeah.
people
Yeah,
need
what's
to
the
know.
overall increase in
Right, what's the
compensation?
overall
Sure.
increase that they're going to experience?
Right.
It's not just the 6%, so there needs to be some acknowledgement on,
For total compensation.
Sure.
But the
What I re-
2750 is gonna be different per person too,
Right.
based on their salary.
Right.
So it's not gonna be an even number. You'd have to kind of do it as a,
Right.
But you could do an average to just
Yeah.
get the,
but ballparkish, I
So we
mean,
get
people just
credit
need to
for it
know
if
that
we're-
it's not just the 6%, you're also,
Right, you have to look at it from a total comp
Right.
perspective,
Yep.
because when you look at it from a total comp, I mean, it's a very good package, so.
Absolutely. Yep.
And I don't think we've ever really talked in those terms before. I think it's always
No.
been salary,
right.
benefits.
Right.
And really, we need to start to look at it from a total comp perspective.
Right.
So there's some comments on the live stream, so I don't know if you want me to like read them as they come
Yeah,
in,
sure.
or.
You don't edit it.
The first one I can answer, it said, would the administration budget include a separate position for both admin assistant for the PD and the town office? And there really isn't one. The town manager has his assistant. There's an assistant for planning, theoretically. There's an assistant for finance and assessing. And then PD in this budget, we're looking at contracting with Camden for those assistant services. And then the next comment says health insurance keeps the employees. So do you want me to just throw them in there when they come in?
Yeah,
or-
as you
okay.
get them.
Sure.
That way we don't lose them and have to go back.
Jeff?
Hi, Jeff.
If comments are allowed, I'll just add that.
Only if you're on live stream. No,
I don't
kidding.
know if you use-
You'll have to go.
You'd have to go to the.
Oh,
mic.
come on over.
I'd like to see what's possible.
The budget book laying on.
Just a quick comment on the all-in cost of a wage increase. In benefits, we also capture things such as FICA and other things that actually also go up with the wage increase. So not a comment in favor or against, it's just a
It's facts.
understanding the facts, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you. All right, any other comments on town manager? All right, next up,
Town clerk.
town clerk. Thank you. Page 117.
Okay, so I'm always going after these oddball numbers. I kind of went down like crazy rabbit holes here with some of these, probably due to my work too, but 4615 write-offs, 14,000, I realize those have to come to us, but
Yes.
I'm kind of locked in my brain, so Megan can unlock me here, because that's what happens when you look at numbers all day. If you were writing it off because it's in the AR, so it's already assumed it's already assumed as income somewhere along the way.
Yeah. When we do commitment, we assume it as income.
Okay, that cleared it. I just was trying to figure out why we're actually saying it's in the budget as a write-off.
That's why.
I mean, logically, on the accounting side, it would make sense, but, yeah.
And really, the only way that we should be writing them off is if we're collecting it somehow on the other end, because then we end up with a shortfall.
Right.
All right, Mark, Denise, John Strand, any comments on town?
Yeah, I'm just
clerk?
doing a quick glance, and it seems like the only increase really is due to the wages. Otherwise, we're
Everything else is pretty much.
pretty
in
much
line.
similar to,
Yeah.
You did want to talk about excise tax.
Yep.
That's in
Oh,
here.
yes, we did want to talk about excise tax.
oh,
Yeah.
under
Anyway,
revenues,
That's
that's
on the
right,
next page.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Next page, revenue, we had it at $1 million. There were lots of conversation last week about if we can actually get there.
Well, particularly with where things are headed now, I think even 950,000 is pretty, you know, that's still gonna be a stretch. I'd be happy if it happened, but
I would too, but I think at $1 million, based on what we've seen so far this year, year to date, I think we're
Yeah.
safer dropping that down to 950.
yeah, I mean, that's, I think out of the 7 months, 3 were down a little bit, 4 were up a little bit. And even if you took the remaining 5 months at face value from last year, it's still only 932.
Yeah.
And considering where seem to be
Yeah.
headed,
Yeah. I used to say it's hard to believe how fast things can change. And then like we lived the last 2 years, you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
right.
Like when we did this in January, I didn't have a question. $1 million, no problem. But
Yeah, right, at the way it was
Right.
going,
Nope.
people
but,
buying new cars
Nope.
like
Right.
crazy.
we should consult with Ken McKinley.
Should be out now.
what's that?
So the state sets our limits on the interest rate that we can set on delinquent taxes.
Okay.
The state reduced that greatly this year due to the pandemic. So I asked John when they issue the new limits, because you could potentially
Yeah,
increase revenue there if they put the interest rate back up.
because it was 7, they went to 9, didn't they?
It was not 8, and then they dropped it down to 3 or 4, whatever it
Oh,
is this
okay.
year.
Same. It's the 4 again.
It's
They
4.
haven't gone up again?
Okay.
Nope. Nope.
Okay.
Okay, so that's probably,
Yeah, so does everyone feel comfortable with moving
950.
that down to 950?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I mean, believe me, I'd like that extra 50, but
Yeah, that was my initial thought too,
not sure
so.
we're gonna get
I
there.
hope I'm happy and
That's
wrong.
right,
I hope
right,
it's more, but.
Have
Then it
we,
just goes into the unassigned fund balance, right?
right.
Right.
isn't there a way to make Excel extrapolate the numbers into the future? Anybody good enough with Excel to do that?
All right, is any other questions for town clerk?
No.
So planning's next, page 125.
Thank you.
Do we just wanna go right down the line instead of waiting for,
Yeah, do it.
see who does and doesn't? I mean, I only had a couple, actually three. One was the, computer consulting support. You know, it doesn't appear as if I mean, if you look at what's been spent in the 3 prior years and what we've got budgeted this year, and it appears as if nothing has been spent. You know, I was actually thinking that that might be knocked down 500 or so.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just.
Yeah, I think part of the reason we've had some lower numbers there is also we have the contractor,
Right.
you know, and so, like Orion's bringing his own laptop in right now, and so it's kind of wild west territory. I mean, I think you could knock it down a little bit and see it where we're going next year, and then, you know,
I mean,
maybe you're back.
I hate the
25.
nickel and dime thing.
No, but
You know.
I hear you.
But
Yeah, I think you could
maybe
get
take
a,
it back to 2, or
yeah.
Yeah.
is that what you're thinking?
It didn't catch me when
Yeah.
I saw it right on, but I think you're right, Mark.
Okay.
That's,
My other one was, you know, the 3850 printing. The history says that we don't do that much. We budgeted 4,000, we spent 551. And you've knocked it back to 2.
2.
Yeah, we've never spent more than 1,000.
I mean, again, $500 would be my preference.
Bring it down to 1,500.
I mean, you know, we've gotta make up that 50,000 we just
I was
took off.
thinking, yeah, it's gonna be
Right,
a lot.
exactly.
Listen, there
we'll get
again.
there. Bit by bit, row by row.
That's right.
And my last one would be, training and education.
That too.
What are we planning?
Well, if,
This
there's
would
a lot of
go-
ifs here, right at the top of the budget, so if we assume if yes at the top, we would have some training that would need to be, accomplished probably by the alternate.
Yeah.
But we've started making inroads there, and I think we've got a list of what classes would need to be accomplished to get to that point, so.
Is there, I'm assuming there's money in there now for a position. I
For
mean,
alternate,
No, I mean, for,
oh, the admin assistant?
right.
Yes,
And
but
what-
not at that, yeah.
What, no,
At
but
that
what
rate.
steps have we taken already to fill that between now and July 1st?
I have been holding back our planner for about 2 months to say, no, not yet, because I wanted us to have this meeting tonight, really to have this conversation and see where that goes. There's a desperate need there. I mean, right now, our code officer is,
Yeah.
you know,
No, I know.
he's, you know,
And-
chef, cook, and bottle washer on this.
And that's why I'm saying, I mean,
yeah.
I think engaging,
Yeah.
I mean, this is getting down the road.
Yeah.
but I'm
Bless you.
supportive of that person
Yeah.
going to the extra money,
Yeah,
the full-time status.
yeah,
And I would think that engaging them and you to start that process, to find that near-perfect person
right.
now, sooner rather than later, because, you know, come the beginning of summer,
Right.
it's only gonna be busier, I hope.
By waiting to right now, and by the time an ad goes out and you hire, we would have enough to pay at the rate that we've talked about for FY '23 for that line. So we don't, it's not as if we have to, you know, well, we'll give you, we'll do this and then in 2 months we'll do that. By waiting that period, we're able to kind of jump onto that plan, you know, as soon as possible, really.
Can we get some nice new furnishings for his office too?
No, we zeroed that line out.
I did.
That's right.
I did.
All right,
Just a
Mark,
little
anything
mean
else
guy.
from
No, good,
you?
thanks.
Okay,
Good.
Eric?
No.
No, nothing from you? I just have a quick question on video technician. So, we've had a small budget in there. Is this different than, I just don't know what this one is versus what other video technician would be.
So this is for planning board, ZBA, ORC.
Gotcha, okay.
And he's live streaming all of
Gotcha,
that now.
okay, all right, that answers that. I just didn't know what that was for. And then, I had the same question on training, we covered that. Legal fees, unfortunately, is high, but it is what it is. I don't dare to take anything out of legal fees based on what we're facing in today's environment, so.
Nice to have friends.
The 50 to 25 cut was sort of like Eric's, deferred, with, do you not, you're gonna have to pay for it, but
Right.
do you,
Right.
what do you want to budget?
Yeah, I'm okay. with
Anyway, yeah.
that. That's all I had. Denise, anything
Yeah,
from
nope.
you? Nope, okay.
Nope, I think it's a good investment in an
Is
office that
Orion
can-
still working out the permit fee schedule?
Yeah, I'm hoping to have that for you guys next week, so.
So that could change here.
Yeah.
It could,
change that.
yeah, so that's my hope, is, he was saying about 30%. The other thing that I wanted to just mention, because we didn't really want to talk about it upstairs, didn't want to talk about, but didn't talk about it. The historical is a little bit misleading when you look at that line, because we've had a couple in particular that were really high permit fees in the past couple of years. So, the new physicians building,
Skew the,
it skews,
Oh,
right, the
okay.
model like
That
way
makes
out of
sense,
whack.
yeah.
So just when you look at that, I think we're at 35 or so, and it was like, that was really not a good representation of where we are, but you don't want to use that historical too,
right,
No,
that
no.
makes
too
sense.
explicitly. So
Yeah, I wasn't even considering historical on that one, because, yeah.
It's
I was just
weird.
looking at the current only.
Yep.
Well, hopefully with this full-time.
How do you really feel?
role, hopefully with this full-time role, we'll get more grants.
Right.
We'll get,
Let's mention it now.
Yeah.
So this was thanks to the work of a lot of people. This is how we do things, right? Mike and Megan and Orion wrote the grant to put together. We got the 2 stream crossing grants, one for Robinson Drive, which will take $125,000 kind of off the table for us. We'll be able to cover that from that state funding. And then West Street Extension, which is another $125,000. Mind you, both will cost far more than $125,000.
$150,000 that doesn't
And then
have
that's
to
on
be
top of
financed.
the current FEMA application that we're
Right.
still
Right,
waiting
so
on.
we could get.
Absolutely. And there would always, even if we got some, there would be a town piece of that. We would
Sure.
always have to, but
Yeah.
that's, that was a very welcomed piece of email
Well,
that I got today. And
That helps make that FEMA reduction percentage that they reimburse whole. or
Exactly.
wholer.
Polar,
Polar.
yeah,
Solar, yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Next is finance, page 135.
Oh, yeah, here we go. Finance. Okay. Mark?
The only thing I had was the travel expenses. I mean, if we're planning on having a vehicle that will be used,
This is actually, the majority of this is for the New England Government Finance Officers Conference, which is where they go over all the new regulations that have been put in place for finance officials
And that's in Boston, right?
this
Is it
year.
Boston? Yeah. Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah, and it's all probably been virtual for the last couple of
They
years.
didn't have it the first year. They tried virtual last year and it was horrible. So I'm glad they're going back
Shocking.
to
That does not sound like a lot of fun. Yeah.
and what's the cost of that?
Well, it's 4 days, so it's travel down and back,
Meals, lodging.
meals, lodging.
And that's you and Molly.
Yeah, that
correct?
covers me and Molly.
2 people. Yep.
That's the only yellow mark I had on that page.
All right,
Yep.
Eric?
Mm-mm.
I'm good.
I'm good.
You good? Okay.
Yep.
Moving right along.
Next is assessing, page 141.
Oh, I forgot to print off the new one.
I didn't.
I have it up on the
Oh,
screen if you
okay.
can see it.
Maybe.
108, 2,
Let's see.
All right.
Thank you.
Mark?
Well, let's talk about 3060, the professional services. Um, And for those that don't know, this is, I believe, unless I'm mistaken, this is what we pay Camden's assistant to come over and help Carrie.
That's right.
There are some dramatic changes with that position. Carrie is no longer going to be a Rockport employee, and he's going to Camden. We are also trying to ensure that Molly, who is now certified, although very green, as an assessor,
Yes.
we want to encourage her development in that role. And I would like to see some of that 3060 lowered, and I'm open for any type of number, which would mean there'd be less usage of Caitlin from Camden, but yet we could sprinkle some of that money as an enticement for Molly to stay enthused about doing that extra work. That was the only thing that I had on that. Everything else was fine, and I'm open for other opinions. I mean, I was,
Ask,
go ahead.
why is the percentage increase of health different from department to department?
Because it depends on what level of coverage. So we offer 2 different plans, plus we offer 4 different levels of coverage. So it depends on where those employees fall, what the percentage of impact was.
Makes sense, thank you.
You're welcome.
Eric, anything from you?
No, just trying to figure out why we have such expensive phone lines? $14.90 on the phone.
So it's the desk. He has a phone. Caitlin has a phone, and then there's a mobile jetpack so that they can use
Oh.
their assessing software out in the field.
Oh, so that's for their cell phones and
The
things.
new, yeah.
Yeah, I gotcha.
What does that 21,838 represent in hours per week for the 3060? Seems it
no,
wasn't
yeah,
it a day and a half?
Yeah,
or
day and a
Day
half, yeah.
I guess
It's
one.
already down,
From
Yeah, it's coming
28.
down
it's already down
23%.
28, from 28.5.
Well, okay,
And that's as requested, right?
Yes, yeah, that didn't change. The other thing I would say is that you obviously are going to enter into contract negotiations, potentially.
Right.
You could enter into contract negotiations with the town of Camden. And, you know, there's some, through that process, you can make some changes, you know, within lines,
Well, I
and
guess-
within the department,
I guess where I'm going with that is I don't want to be reliant on our neighbors for that position when we are actively training somebody in-house.
Sure.
So I want to wean ourselves off of that
Right.
and take care of our own employees.
Yep.
So that's where I'm going with that,
Yeah.
so.
And I guess the explanation, I see that we went from a 1.5 assistant assessor to 1 deputy assessor. So
Right,
maybe the hourly rate went up a little bit, but then
right,
we lost a half a day.
right.
Yeah, but we
on-
are gonna be negotiating all this.
Yeah. On travel expenses, I know it says it's shared with Camden. Is that our portion?
So
Okay.
what I did here, to do the reduction, Carrie had considered him and Molly so that Molly could go to the trainings with him. So I took his half of that out and
Okay.
left half of it for Molly.
Okay. And you did, so that's the travel expense and then also the training and education. you
And
did
dues
that
and
as well. Okay.
memberships. Yep. I
Okay.
just basically cut it in half,
Cut it in
not
half.
knowing. I was assuming that it was the same price for both of them.
And is the training and education so high because of the new software? Is it, I mean, I know it will be less because it will be just Molly, but, I mean, it looks like we've been like the 1,200 to 600 to 200 so far this year.
In the past, Carrie has been comped trainings for ones that he's presenting.
$700 are we gonna put towards Molly?
Well, the whole 1850 that's in there now.
1850.
Yeah, it went to
Yeah, you have
1850
to-
with
It
the
went
new.
to, the new one is
On
up
the
on
On
the
the
screen, Mark.
screen.
Yeah.
All right, sorry,
Yeah. So that will be allotted to Molly's training.
all right,
Okay.
good.
I'm sorry, Eric,
there's
I
a
think I skipped over you.
No,
Comment
that's
here.
fine.
Okay, yep.
It says how much and how has the money from the American Rescue Plan Act been implemented? Knox County provided stipends to its employees.
Right. So the answer is that the board had made a decision to dedicate the first half of the ARPA funds towards broadband. Obviously, that's not part of this budget, but that was a vote that the board had taken last summer. There's a second half of those ARPA funds, another $170 or so thousand dollars, that the town has not, and the board has not dedicated to another purpose. The town has until 2024, I believe, to make a decision as to how it wishes to spend it. And then I believe 2026 to actually have expended the funds. So there's some time for that conversation to be had. But no funds have been dedicated to employees or, right, there's some of those county governments in particular, other municipalities have chosen to use some of those funds for those who were frontline workers through the pandemic.
I mean, I'll tell you what, I mean, my 2 cents would be to use it to decrease the amount of money that we're going to be asking the taxpayers for. I mean, I know that there might be other thoughts of what to do with it, but this is not your normal year, neither were the last two, so.
Yeah.
So, what are
And I
the,
think the categories in which we can apply that have expanded as well, right?
Right.
We went through this first round, it's a very small number of categories in which we can
Broad.
apply that.
Yeah.
There's another one here.
Okay.
There should be no positions reliant upon outside the town. Why not be self-sufficient / reliant?
That wasn't me, I didn't,
Are you logged on to live stream? Well, I mean, some places it makes sense that we share. If we don't need a full-time, and it's a cost savings to us, to not have someone sit in an office for 40 hours if we don't need someone in an office for 40 hours.
but so, to argue that point, we're increasing years ago, when we decided as a board to not fill the planning position and contract it out, we decided then we didn't need one. So here we are now deciding that we do need one. You know, the code enforcement has always been 32 hours, and now we're deciding that we need, a full-time code enforcement,
Plus an
Yeah.
assist, plus more.
plus an assistant, right. And then, here we are, we only have a 20-hour a week, basically, an assessor. I mean, we have access to them, but we basically have them for 20 hours a week. And they're probably one of the most crucial people we have to keep things upright. So, to the point, I would have been happy to budget the whole thing and see where we end out with negotiations, but, I mean, that's as crucial a point as either of the other two.
Good points.
So that's
Megan,
it for
anything
comments
else?
on
Okay.
this.
All right, any other questions for assessing? All right.
Insurance, page 147.
Insurance. Any questions for insurance?
not much you can do with it.
Right,
No.
there's not a whole lot of leeway in
No,
there.
And not a real big change.
you need insurance, yes.
Okay.
General assistance, page 155.
I don't think I had anything on general assistance.
I mean, my question years ago, and I want to see if Jonathan can give a different answer. We have somebody that's a full-time employee. They're working as a full-time employee and also subbing themselves out, if you will, during their normal day to do the GA stuff. Why don't we just add all that high and pay it out of that?
Yeah.
I mean, it just seems,
I'm still getting my head around the idea of how we use stipends and how, you know, where we use them, where it
Yeah.
makes sense.
No,
Yeah.
I agree
Which
that
is a
they
good
need to
thing
be
to look at.
compensated for doing it.
Oh, yeah, of
But,
course.
but while they're
sure.
doing that, they're not doing something for you or vice versa.
Yeah, right,
So,
right. I think that's right, if we're just talking about the cost is the cost and we're ignoring the cost, but how do you structure it?
Right.
So that it best
And that it's
represents,
consistent, because if we look through
Mm-hmm.
this from a stipends perspective, they're all different. They're different, and I'm sure it's because of some require more effort than others.
Right.
I'm sure there are weekend calls from a, you know, from a general assistance
oh, yeah,
perspective.
absolutely,
But I think
yeah.
I think as we look across stipends, there are some that are here, there are some that are here, and how do you balance that out?
Right.
You know, to make sure that it's equitable, and if we're asking people to take on additional responsibilities,
Yeah.
to Mark's point, some of that's being done during the working hours
Right.
anyway, so just think we need to take a look at that from a consistency perspective.
Looking at 3360, where we've got the $10,000, which is a lot more than we've ever spent. Is there room to make that 5,000? Is there some
This
reason?
is, anything in gray is actually 100% offset with revenues between what the state reimburses us and what we're using out of donated funds.
Okay.
So even if you make a reduction there, we'd have to reduce the revenue, so it's gonna have
Oh,
a zero
okay.
impact.
Okay,
Okay.
that makes sense.
The man in the corner booth had a thought.
Oh, hi.
Just one thing to consider on the, I think I took the mic off. One thing to consider on the stipends is that when you go for a salary review and you look at other people
Yes.
in other towns, it helps you allocate that time.
Yes,
Yes.
thank you. All right, any other questions for public assistance, general assistance, sorry?
So the police department's next, page
department next.
163.
Okay.
well, let me go down through my little list of yellow markings. Can't let Randy get out of it scot-free. 3035 laundry. I mean, we haven't spent, historically, we haven't spent any more than, say, 1,900. And to date, we've spent 450. I mean, I was just thinking about sending it back to 2,000. I mean, if it goes over, it goes over, but historically, it doesn't appear as if we've spent what's being asked for.
Is there any sense of why historically it's decreased year over year over the last 4 years?
I think it's due to the vacancies we've had in the department.
Yeah.
Oh, good point. Right.
We're the only ones that haven't had a vacancy in the last couple of years.
Yeah, but we've had changeover in staff. We had an employee at the academy for a while where we weren't washing uniforms.
But even so, looking at the years prior to that, 19, 20, and 21,
Yeah, I'm not saying
Yeah.
that
Right.
it shouldn't be reduced. I'm just saying that's why it's
You know.
all over the place.
So we could make it 2,000 pretty
2,000.
easily.
and you know, if it's over, it's over. But, you know, a dollar here, a dollar there at the end of the day,
Right.
and there again, I'd much rather have 50,000 to turn back at the end of the year than 300,000.
Right. I mean, and that's, you know, going through the clerk's budget and other budgets that are pretty consistently pretty on the spot, you know. That's what I said is that, for example, I cut back, you know, from 1,500 to 1,000 on her training, her request, because I said, look, if we need to do it, we'll do it. You know, that's the trick is. The problem is, of course, is making sure that you can do all the other things that you aren't planning to do. So that's the balance, right, of the whole thing.
Having the time for them to get away to do it.
Right, right. It's a whole, you know, so.
Legal
training.
was my next one, 3040.
Yep.
What was the 3169 all FOIAs for
Yep.
this year?
Yep.
And so you're expecting, you
And
know,
we just had another one that just ran through, so, yeah,
I think anything with legal, we really
Yeah.
have to leave.
I was almost thinking we should move the 600 from the one
Down to
above
that.
down to the
Down
next
to the
line and
legal.
offset
Down
them
into
because
legal, yeah.
if
Yeah.
you've had two more, then that's
Yeah.
3169 is already way outdated.
Right. Yes. Yes.
That's not a bad recommendation. I think that,
Yes.
I'm not all for increasing, but I think if we've got 600, let's move it into that line. I mean, if you, to Eric's point, you're already over right now.
Yep.
It's not gonna stop,
No.
so.
No.
And I'll do one of Eric's 3320s, a telephone. I mean, we've got $4,700 rounding it up, and we're asking for 55. And historically, we've only spent 45, 47, 44. And if you look at this year, it's gonna be 47. So,
Are we adding a phone?
No.
No.
I mean, I'd be just as happy to knock 500 off that, but,
Yeah. What are we budgeting for advertising for? Are we thinking we're gonna be advertising for another officer, or is this something else?
I think it's to make sure you have it available in case you do have to. You know, break glass in
I
case
think-
of emergency situation.
I think they have to advertise for overnight parking and other things.
That's true
in
too.
the
Yep,
publications.
that's right.
I mean, a lot of it goes online, I think, but
Yeah.
in the past,
Well, it's just odd because we've never spent anything unless we have something this year yet.
so my next 3610 and 36, you know, historically, you know, back in 1819, we spent a fair amount, but, you know,
We just spent almost $2,000 upgrading,
on new
The
stuff.
router.
yeah,
The router,
VPN.
that's
When a when computer equipment breaks, it's expensive.
Yeah. But that's, you know, theoretically new stuff. So equipment maintenance, you know, historically, if you look at it, you know, 400, 300, 700. We budgeted 21, and even if we double what we've got, it's 500.
Is this the time I mentioned the drive shaft breaking on the? Maybe not, but we had a little bit of an issue on one of our cruisers this
but
last week. So.
that one's in-
Not- Anyway, I won't talk with vehicles, but
No, I'll get to that in a minute.
yeah.
Okay, so Mark, you're
all right.
suggesting that you could reduce the 2,100 to 1,000?
1,000.
You know, I wasn't even gonna, I was gonna say like 1,500, just to give a little padding, but,
1,500.
you know, I just think that's, without great justification for, well, leave that one alone, I guess.
And did you want to do anything with computer repairs and maintenance?
To me, I mean, when you look at what's been spent, other than the,
Oh, but if we had a $2,000
Just had a
bill,
$2,000
right.
bill, so now we're up to 27
700.
year to date.
training supplies,
Plus, they're getting those electronic ticketers,
Oh,
which
right,
that's only
yes.
covering the units, not the installation and the tech support for all that.
yeah.
Keep it
Okay.
in there.
We should be, aren't they getting grants for that?
For the printers.
Printer
Printers
itself,
themselves.
yeah.
We should be having the state pay for that, so we can,
I agree.
we're
Since we
doing
get
all the
no
work for
revenue.
them.
Since
Yeah.
we're
It's
in
costing
the-
us money to make them
To
money.
make them.
Tell me
Right.
when you've heard this one before. The
Yeah.
state's gonna stick us with a bill and not pay for it.
Right.
All right?
Yeah,
I mean,
I think we've got money that the state, yeah, that's another,
yeah.
we owe, yeah, money to. Flipping my, no, I do have something on the next page. Vehicle changeover.
Yep.
You know, I've done it for a number of years, and I think 10 is a high number. And I know we changed, I mean, if you look at what it's cost, what we have historically, and we've spent nothing to take out of one car and put in another.
Except for we're going from a Dodge Charger to an Explorer. So
and an
the
Explorer, too,
equipment, well,
Explorer,
yeah, but
I'll get him next year.
Okay.
Okay. Reserve line to help off the R0609. I'd like to use 4,000 in that to lower the cost of 7250 down to 30,000.
which you could do, but that's gonna extend the time frame in which that replacement schedule becomes self-sufficient.
Well, we're gonna sell a car and put the money that we get from the sale of it back into that. So it's gonna be feeding itself eventually. That was the whole idea of us selling our cars to begin with, not trading them. But, you know, depleting the line, I think there was 16,000 or something in the line. And we are gonna have a car that we're going to be selling. So, and I'm, being a betting person and a horse trader, I'd say we're gonna easily get that 4,000 back. And that could be put back in.
If we do that, Megan, how does it impact the schedule? If we took it out of that and then we put it back in when we sold the car?
Well, it won't if we for certain put that money
Okay.
into the reserve.
Well, that would be my intention. I mean, that's, you know, if you figure, and you could, I think conservatively say 6,000 per car, over 3 years, you've got 18,000 you could put in there, so that when you do go to buy a new one, you won't have it all initially, but we can still feed a little bit into the reserve so that we would. Anyway, it makes sense in my little pea brain.
No, that makes sense.
I've never been a fan of trading cars because you do not get,
No, you don't get.
so that would be that's all I've got, is just using 4,000 of the reserve and lowering the 7250 down to 30.
Anyone have any concerns with that?
Well, I'd leave the 7250 at 34 and add the revenue for 4,000, which effectively would make it 30.
However it works.
That's fine.
And that,
There's another comment here. The administrative assistant is being contracted out. Will there be budgeting for a full-time chief or continued contract as well?
I have a little history on that with Bill, if we can believe what he told us then, like he did with the other stuff. I asked Bill if he would check with the officers who were there and ask them 3 things. Do you want to continue with what you have as a shared chief? Do you want to have your own chief? Or do you want to, and the overall, overwhelming majority of them, I mean, there aren't that many, but they didn't want to have their own chief. They didn't want to combine. They were happy with things the way they were. I have different opinions, but it's how they feel.
right.
And that's why we checked with them, so, you know, that's the history that I've got with Bill and the survey that he did within the department.
Yep, yep.
So I think the answer to the question is, the plan is to continue to share
Yeah.
with a new plan of sharing an administrative assistant.
That's right, that's right.
Okay, Eric, any questions for, police department?
No, he hit them all.
He hit them all.
Jesus. We're looking
Denise.
at your book.
Denise, no questions, and I had no questions.
Okay, so next is the fire department, which is on page 175.
Can I back up for just a second with the police? I mean, I'm just running this out there. I wasn't aware that the active vehicle locators that we currently have within the police department vehicles
Right.
were something that we had to pay for on a yearly basis.
I believe there was a grant on the prior program, and the grant ended.
Well, and I mean, I do some work with someone who has those in their
Right.
car,
Right.
and this goes into another whole time card type of thing where you have an app on your phone, you open it up, you tell them you're to work, you tell them when you're done, and it gets shipped off to the Megan of the world, and you lose your paper trail, and there's more of an accurate documentation of your hours
Right.
for your benefit. But with the active vehicle locators, he has the same thing, and I've got to check with him to see whether he does a yearly expense, you know.
Yeah, I know there's a couple, you can buy them outright, you can, my thought initially was to try to see how this works with, by the month, try to see how this fits, but, all of those options, I think, are available. We did look at one point about kind of online time cards or something on your phone or on a tablet, and the cost just wasn't really feasible for us at that point. But, if we have some opportunities, to make it easier and cut down the paper, that would be a great thing because, boy, you've signed the warrants and look at those payroll, and
Reams of paper.
it's a lot of paper. And I'm not saying it to make it sound like, oh, we're not managing our staff's time, but it's, even as somebody who's signing off, it's the steps. There's steps for us that are really onerous. So there's got to be a better way. I think maybe that could be part of our solution at some point.
All right, moving on to fire department. Remind me of the page, I'm sorry. I lost it.
Sorry. 175.
Thank you. Got it.
For volunteer firefighters, what's the change over the,
We sort of got
Because-
staccato.
Yeah, try that again, John. Sorry, say that again, John.
actually spend, but then we budget for 64,000? What's the reason for that?
Go ahead, you can answer.
So, estimating their call volume and length of time at a call is extremely difficult. So we look at historical call volume and what that looks like, and then try to add the percentage increase on top of that for the volunteer firefighters. So it's an art, not a science, and it's hard to estimate what that's going to look like.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
In going down the list and looking at, we're giving 6% for stipend people, but we're not doing anything for the firefighters.
Go ahead.
No, I'm,
They-
You started.
They would get the same 6%, but because they're only at, if we doubled what their year end was, it was 46,000. So when I talked to Jason about it, we didn't really see a need to increase the 64,000, but didn't know what call volume would do either. So felt comfortable
Because it's
leaving it
based
there.
on
yeah,
how many calls
an unknown.
And how long they're
and
there.
how long they're there.
Yeah.
And how much
And-
training they have. He
Right.
didn't do a lot of training and meetings, which they typically get paid for, so it's down a little bit. So 64,000 might not be the right number, but I
Totally
don't
close.
really know
Right.
what the right number would
It's
be.
a
Well, it's
dartboard
hard. You can't
toss.
tell. I mean,
Right.
how could you figure that out?
Yep.
Okay.
So, you know me with fuel, the 5806, we've not spent anything for diesel fuel this year?
If diesel fuel.
Yeah,
Wastewater, Public Works has to give Jason a bill, cause he gets it at Public Works.
doesn't Mike have an assistant that could be on top of that a little better? Just saying.
We could probably get it more accurate
I-
though.
It's frustrating when you don't have, something that's as simple as,
So
Understandable.
we're not
Completely agree.
using a tracking system for our own fuel usage at our public
But Public
works.
Works.
They just do it. That's not good. I mean, they make tracking systems where you just put a card and it would track to department
Your
and,
odometer number and the last four of your social, and that way they know what vehicle and who it was.
But I think the contractor that you were referring to, Mark, has a system like
Yeah.
that can do that sort of thing, so.
we should have a system that does that because,
Right.
At $5 a gallon.
yeah, and
Yeah.
just because.
Right, right. Yeah.
Agreed. Mark, anything else, fire
No,
department?
I'm good.
Eric?
Jason does pretty good.
5,400, I guess. Are we first responder equipment, but yet we've knocked out the EMS first responders line up top, so are we still needing that 3,000 there?
This is for them to have the equipment on the fire trucks that they have. So Jason's been slowly purchasing blood pressure cuffs, pulse oximeters, stuff like this. So this is to continue to put that equipment on the fire trucks.
Oh,
Wasn't that 458 the basket they had to buy, the new basket?
Yep.
Yeah.
There's another comment here.
Okay.
How much would it cost to implement that at Public Works? Assume they're talking, it said tracking system, so. Diesel.
Yeah, I'm not sure. We'd have to find, let's see if we can get that answer.
John will put that on his to-do list.
To do.
Yeah, I mean, you can,
Yeah.
see what happens when I talk.
That's good. It's a good idea.
Nope.
All right. Eric, you go. Oh, Jeff. That's all right. Speak loud.
I think he said that the mic was picking it up, so if it's not that, there might be one above you that they'll pick you up.
Just because you brought up the conversation about fuel, are we looking at fuel and heating oil costs right now in this budget? Because they're skyrocketing. Crystal ball.
Right.
No one knows, but if this is based on last year's costs, it's probably not quite enough in the budget. And I am not interested in increasing the budget for
For any reason, but, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This,
Good point.
I've had the same thought.
this budget accounted for a marginal increase, but not what we've seen in the last few weeks.
Yeah.
It's definitely something we've got to consider because once it goes up fast and it comes down really slow, so.
Right.
I don't know what that means for all of our buildings, but
Right.
And if heating oil's over 450, so.
I can look at our consumptions and John and I can try to come up with a price.
okay.
so,
Eric, anything from you? You were all set, or did you?
No, that was my only question,
Okay.
really.
Denise?
Nothing.
Nothing, and I'm good.
my last thing on the streetlights, speaking of page 185, under public safety.
We're not there yet.
Not there yet.
Well, it's all under, isn't it all under,
No, this is
That's the next one, Mark.
the next category.
I know you
so-
got a yellow mark, but
Yeah.
you know,
no, I mean, I got two on that page,
okay.
you know, and the,
All right, are we good with fire department?
Do you want to
Yeah.
make your changes? I mean, in line of that, or do you want, we're gonna come back with that in
With
terms
what-
of
With what change?
fuel and you wanna
Well, I
wait?
don't think we know,
Okay,
right?
wait, let us do our work and.
Yeah, I think
'Cause
we need to
that's-
hold off on, we know fuel's an issue, but I don't think it's worth
We know what
plugging the numbers in here now.
Yep.
Why don't we wait and
That could be a last.
see over the next couple of weeks, 3 or 4 weeks? Who knows, maybe our government will be smart enough to increase our production.
So, I'm appreciative of us having our lights, the new lights. What I would like to see us do, at least this year, if not in total, is to fund our 70 balance. And if I had my druthers, I would try to finance all 7 years of it and get it out of the way. but I would be happy with 1 year funded out of unassigned fund balance. I mean, you know, I'm looking down the road at a new fire station. I'm trying to find ways to free up money so that we can spend money. And it isn't much, but it's for 7 years at that rate. So what's that, 340,000? And obviously, I don't want to spend all that because we may have other stuff that we want to use it for, but
Does it buy us anything other than we're one payment ahead? Or one, like if we,
No, it wouldn't,
The
not
interest
really.
rate,
We, the interest rate was minimal on that.
and that's fine. I'm just, it
I
just
know, it's,
bugs me.
but it's on your heart and mind. You talk about it a lot.
Well, yeah, I know.
But why a particular item to say, let's use money out of the unassigned fund balance? I mean, why not?
But it's 340,000 or whatever that,
Right.
40,
Well, I'd like to have a discussion at some point about taking some of the unassigned fund balance when we get to the.
saying, I'd be happy just using 1 year to offset it this year.
I'm just thinking using it more as an offset on the whole budget rather than
Rather than
picking
a
a
line
particular
item.
item.
Just allocate it in revenue
Overall.
and then it reduces the net
Gotcha,
budget.
okay, that makes sense.
Okay, next.
All right, Eric, anything for other public safety services?
Of 93, or are we still talking to them? Okay.
We're still talking, but, yeah, I don't feel comfortable with the number right now we have. It will be north of 93 when we come back, but
Okay, so we need to revisit that.
we'd revisit that.
I mean, from what I was told by one of the budget committee members in Camden, they had no interest in doing a 3-year contract.
Northeast didn't,
No, the town didn't.
Camden didn't.
Right, they wanted to do a 1 year. So they might be the only one doing a 1 year where the rest of us are doing 3, I hope. And in turn, that might make us pay a little bit more. But
Well, in the meeting that I had with the 4 managers and administrators, when we talked about a 3-year agreement, it was pretty clear that that was considered to be a good idea from all 4 parties, and all 4 of us vocalized that idea. So I'm not sure, you know, from where that comes from or what have you, but it was pretty clear when we met with Northeast, that was the message we sent.
But that was
So-
the chair of the budget committee was the one that told me, so
Oh.
I just,
Yeah.
just conveying
Oh,
that they had no
yeah.
interest in doing 3,
Yeah,
you know, so I know that other decisions will be made by the manager and the board,
yeah.
and I don't understand why they wouldn't want to do 3. It's in everyone's best interest.
Yeah, and in any other circumstance that we have will require a significant ramp up. You know, if we were to decide tomorrow we were gonna link arms, it's gonna take us a while to hire the staff, buy the rigs. I mean,
Well,
it's not a quick solution.
And I'm not gonna
I'd
say.
question that from
And I'm not
Cameron's
gonna say that
perspective.
I'm not gonna be around for another 3 years after this 3 years, but
Mm-hmm.
people need to start being more honest with us and say, you know, we're looking at having our own service, and it's gonna cost us
Mm-hmm.
$3 or $4 million. And that hasn't
Right.
even been talked about.
No.
And that's unfortunate,
Right.
because when it does get sprung on people, it's not gonna be a happy day. And I'm probably not gonna be around to listen to it, so, good luck.
Well, and I guess that would be something that would be good to consider in the shared category if we can
Yeah.
work
But
together.
that's the part, is it's, everybody thinks that nobody knows that this is going on behind the scenes, maybe, but it is. I mean, that's one of the reasons we're building a fire station over there as big as it is. You know, because the groundwork is being laid, you know, your firemen, yes, it's great to have them trained as EMTs, EMS, whatever, but it's laying the groundwork for eventually saying, hey, let's have our own. But nobody has yet come out and told us what that number is gonna be.
Right.
And I'd rather have them be up front and talk about it and what their projection is down the road, whether it's 3 years, 5 years,
Right.
1 year. But let's talk about it. Let's just not all of a sudden spring it on people.
No, I think that from what I gather, I think that will happen soon. I think there will be I think that will happen. I think the problem is where we are right now is we can't put ourselves in a position as our community, if I were in their shoes, to say anything less than 3 years. Now, there are opt-outs in that contract. You
Right.
can simply say within so much notice, you can move on. And I think everyone understands that. And having met with Northeast, they understand that conversation is also occurring. So I'm sure they also want to be sure that they're providing good service at a reasonable rate. And because there is competition of sorts in that realm, and so they have to, make sure we are understanding of that.
And I need to have somebody convince me that spending, even if we spend $150,000, $200,000 a year, and we're monitoring the way that service is being provided in a way that causes no heartburn, why that $200,000 a year doing that is not better than spending multi-million dollars for something, you gotta be able to sell it to
Oh,
me,
yeah.
and I'm not sold yet.
Right.
I mean, I am on the fire station because we need one.
Yep.
That said,
Right. Yeah, there needs to be a bigger community conversation.
Yep.
Rockport needs to have that conversation. Canada needs to have that conversation. Rockland. We need to say what makes sense for Rockport, first and foremost.
now I can see him and it makes me nervous back there.
All right, any other comments on public safety, other public safety services? Would anyone be opposed if we took a 5-minute stretch break?
Great idea.
Perfect, let's do that. Coming back to animal control.
I was gonna say, well, that's exciting.
Yeah.
We gotta rest up.
That's right, that's big,
There's 11
big
people
numbers
watching.
there.
Oh, good.
What's the guy
Don't want me to
stuck?
pass out over here, that could be, you know?
Right.
Low CPR
That's how
tonight.
crazy.
No, see, right, we gotta get those, we get the EMS supplies for,
That's
that
right.
way.
We call them 911.
Are we live?
Oh, good.
I mean,
That's
We're
what
back.
we want. I want to hear about me.
I've got a story about that back from 1982.
Okay, we are back.
Animal control, 191.
Animal control, 191. I had no questions on this.
I guess my only concern was the vet fees, which you said,
So we took the vet fees out, which I know Randy expressed concern with that only because of the situation that Camden is having currently.
Right.
If we had that situation, where would we get the money from?
Police.
Okay, we'd have to take it out of that budget.
It would come from somewhere.
Yeah, or we just simply overspend. And then, you know, I mean, $10,000 is, I don't think you should rationally ever budget that amount.
We can't budget that.
You know, it's
No.
never fun. Animal control
Okay.
is the worst.
Any additional questions for animal control?
Nick?
All right,
Harbor, 197.
Harbor. Thank you, Megan. Mark, we'll start with you. Any questions?
Well, how do I want to diplomatically tackle this? We're sharing our harbor master now with Camden.
Well,
Well,
clarify
let's
that so
clarify
people
that.
aren't
We're not sharing a
confused.
harbor, we're sharing
No,
the
the
winter
position, the
resources.
body during the winter months. And we're not, as we've talked about, being compensated adequately, which will be adjusted in the future should we go that route. Is there not enough work for that position to stay in Rockport for 40 hours a week for the 3 months that they're gone?
So is there enough work as, you know, as it's established now?
As a town employee,
Yeah.
anywhere, to include what
Right.
work might need to be done at the harbor, getting ready for next year,
Right.
is there enough work that can be found for that person to be a 40-hour-a-week person during that 3 months that they're now
Yeah.
sublet, for the lack of a better?
I think the trick to that, I guess the key piece of that question is to be found. You know, and I think it's, we, over the last, let's say 20 years, we've had a hard time trying to figure that to be found part. We've had the harbor master work with Public Works. That didn't work out so well. We had them somewhat working on their own. We found, you know, winter projects, building floats and the like. And that would always kind of maintain through, putting on events, planning for the next year. And then, you know, there's the piece of this of, is that the position that balances out over 12 months? You know, is it a situation where, you know, you get 60 in the summer, but you get 20 in the winter for those 3 months? And
Well,
does that then,
You're salaried.
yeah, right,
You know.
right.
Right.
You know, no one wants to look at what I'm doing right now, but, you know,
And-
there might be a
and-
time of year
but
people
if-
don't call
But
me.
if that's the case, when you have your deputy as well as yourself working
Yeah.
basically the same days, that's not the
That's true.
managerial side of that. You
Yeah.
shouldn't have to work 60 or 70 hours.
You shouldn't. You shouldn't. I mean, it does happen. There's, you know, you have storms, you have events
Yeah.
that go on, and that's one thing we've talked about in here is we have a lot more rentals going on at the harbor. That was a really a big, not just rentals, but revenue was a big push. Before I got here, that was a
Right.
conversation last year. And that's a message that I think the harbor committee heard. I think it's something that we really, you know, as we're trying to build this budget, to try to get back to that I don't know that you ever get 100% paid for, but a lot closer than you were,
Well,
you know?
and that goes back to the compensation portion of it with our neighbors. The board was never advised that there was going to be an agreement to begin with,
Right, right.
and that's disappointing. It's not your fault, it was your predecessor. And if we so chose to do it again, I would want, I don't want them working from home. I mean, there's gotta be something they can do. We've got 2 open positions here now. They can answer phones, talk to people at the window.
Yeah.
They could do something here. And if we do go into an agreement again with our neighbors, then it needs to be equitable where it's a 50-50 split. Because it's just not right. So either we've got enough work, or we have an agreement that shares it 50-50, or we make it seasonal.
Yeah.
All
know,
valid points. Because I think, to your point, we don't want to, I mean, in these times, we don't want to just find something for someone to do for the sake of having them do something. I think that, having that position assist Camden this year was a good option. I don't think necessarily we weren't consulted regarding the terms, but, I think if we look to do that again, we obviously would want to put more structure around that and make sure that, we are all in, especially as a board, in an agreement that makes sense for Rockport.
Right.
I mean, so that goes back to, we have the openings in there now with codes assistant, with the police chief's assistant, that's been empty for some time. And now we're gonna be paying Camden to do the police chief portion of that. And we haven't gone out to hire anybody yet to fill the code enforcement side of things.
Right.
That person could be sitting and answering phones and relieving some of the pressure somehow.
Yeah.
But that's you,
Right. You know how that is.
Yeah.
You could hire somebody to do the job who will do it well, or you could spend more time managing the person and I'm not saying that based upon the person, but it's based
Right.
upon their skill set.
Well, when they're
you
only
know?
in there for
Yeah, and with the
2 or 3
background,
months,
yeah.
Right.
that's
Short
the
period of
challenge.
time.
That's the challenge with that.
I can answer the phone really, really nicely, but maybe I wouldn't be the most effective person to do it, So it's trying to find the right skill set. And I think, coming in here, I'd never had a full-time harbor master anywhere I'd been, we'd shared an agreement with Newcastle and Damascotta. So I wanted to understand, what does that look like? And I will say, this was the busiest summer our harbors had. That was tremendous. We had a storm that hit us on Halloween, that then extended sort of the workload and the impacts into November. So I don't think I got a really good view of what a normal, tear down season, put the floats away. We still had floats in the, out in the harbor into December, because it just, and then we had the pier. So I guess my point is, I don't know that I have a great sense of that, but there's absolutely there is a 12-month a year need for someone to maintain an eye on projects, planning, of trying to get ahead of the building. And we've also added some things in terms of management of the Harbor Committee and a Conservation Commission, where we're putting onto our department heads. So there's a lot more responsibilities in that regard. Is it 5 days a week, 40 hours? No. So that's when looking at that arrangement and trying to say, well, is there a way we can offset those costs of the town of Rockport by trading labor effectively? And when you have a particular person with those skills, a person whose skills are probably, in that situation, run the ski patrol or answer the phones for planning and codes. All things were equal, ski patrol would be for that harbor master, and so that was kind of the balance as I was looking at it, is, okay, let's see how this works and see if it benefits us. There's been pros, there've been cons to it. All sides would agree to it.
And I'm okay with that, as
Yeah.
long as it's a fair
Equitable.
shake.
Sure.
financially. And the liabilities, I mean, what happens, you know, they're working for us and they're getting paid by them. What happens if they break a leg while they're skiing? Then we're out a harbor master. I mean, so what?
Yeah.
And is that on our workers' comp?
Right, right.
So there are a lot of things that need, I mean,
Yep.
the 4 or 5 lines that the agreement was in place is very thin.
Yeah, I think, I think we would, I think I looked at it as a trial period, does it make sense, does it not make sense? And I think that's one area where we can very easily, clean up that level of responsibility. So if something were to happen, we know who's responsible, how it's handled, but I think that there were benefits to that arrangement as well.
But it's,
My, go ahead.
well, I was gonna say, it's almost better if that is the continued direction that happens, that person is hired by Camden directly for that, because they're the ones that should take that liability on
For the full 3 months.
for that period of time, even if it's just, we're gonna just cut, pay that portion of the salary when we reduce it by that same amount and put it on them completely and not even have them reimburse us, because again, it's a workers' comp issue. I mean, the position is rated for a harbor master and all of a sudden they're over there skiing. It's a totally different code, which means the liability rate is different. And if the injury occurs there while they were being rated as a harbor master, it could totally skew the reporting and cause other issues.
I think there's a way you can work through that contractually.
I'm sure there is,
But the cost of a harbor master and a ski patrol director is really not that meaningful, I wouldn't imagine. Harbor master's a pretty dangerous job as
well,
well,
I agree,
you know?
but a warehouse position and a store clerk position can be similar too, but I mean,
Right.
but their ratings are,
Yeah.
I get it. I've done a lot of workers' comp stuff,
Sure.
so I understand. I'm just, if it would have to be a very spelled out contract stating that if an injury occurs and it exceeds our workers' comp, that it would have to come from someone else.
So,
Well, let's wait and see.
Yeah, so back to this budget.
my last question on that is, what are we putting a vehicle location device on for $840?
I don't have a vehicle, right?
At present, there isn't a vehicle. There was a request for a truck to be included here. We cut that from the budget.
Well, we ought to
Then I
cut the
would-
$840 then too.
Cut that.
Well, no.
Because we're moving a vehicle.
Because, right, there's an old 1 ton that, from Public Works, that we would bring over to try to see what's the use of this. So it's not an additional truck, it's not the purchase of additional truck, but there was an express need that this is a vehicle that's used frequently for dump runs to the head of the town office, pulling the boat out, on and on, for no additional cost other than the vehicle locator.
I mean,
That seemed to be a minor cost rather to see, is there use for this? If there's not use for this, then, we
mean,
can certainly deal with it in a future budget
we
year.
certainly have someone that takes the trash for us down there by the dumpster,
Sure.
when it's not being
Well-
overfilled by, I know.
Oh,
Right.
it's a mess
So,
most summer,
but yeah,
most
I
summer
mean,
days.
so as far as taking trash, I don't buy that so much. I mean, the guys, in the highway crew, they make their rounds at the little doggy stations anyway, one down there. There's no reason why they can't pick stuff up.
Yes, although as we talked about, we'll get into, that didn't happen as often this summer as it needed to. And anyway, it's personal vehicles being used, and the idea is to try to get away from personal
And
vehicle
if we're
being used for
using
harbor business.
someone's probably submitting some type of reimbursement,
Right,
right?
so you would offset that.
So-
Is there any documentation of how much that was used last year?
No.
So we
She was
don't,
getting a
Well,
mileage
200,
stipend,
Yeah.
Right,
so $480 a year.
right.
So we
So that goes
taken the
away.
mileage stipend out and added in $840 for a locator device.
Right.
the $360 for whatever it is.
I mean, you could take that out. You could take out the vehicle locator, but it
No,
seems like that's,
No.
I'd rather have,
you know
If
what I
we're
mean?
gonna have a
Like, there's
vehicle, I want the locator
I'd
on
rather have
it
it.
to determine.
and how's that gonna be, you know, how's that gonna be, monitored? Is that,
The vehicle locator, you mean?
yeah?
Well, it's a web-based, I mean, it's probably just like Tom
Well,
has. I mean, it's a
and
web-based
Where I'm
situation.
going with that is, as
Yep.
we've already talked about with the streetlights, we got a $30,000 piece of equipment
Yep.
that nobody was using to do anything with the lights that were out until it was brought up. And then we started
I
doing
use
something
it.
about it.
Right,
But,
right.
so there again, I mean,
Yeah.
we're gonna have these things.
Yeah.
You know.
That's why you had to hire a geek like me to keep an eye on these things, Mark. That's what
That's
it
a-
is.
I love it.
No, but that's the thing, right? Is we have all these assets. How are we managing them?
Right.
You know, like it. You ride around and you see everything, right? And
You
it
bet.
helps. You know, hey, every once in a while I'll get a hey, did you know about this?
Yeah.
And that's great. But we don't have enough eyes everywhere, and that's not even. Here's the other side of this. I mean, just talking a broader sense, there's dash cams on this too. So I hate to say it, but sometimes we get the call about something that may have occurred by a town vehicle, and it'd be really great to be able to say, oh, let me call this up. Yep. Nope, we didn't just run over your mailbox and then back over it and then pull forward again. You know, we need to have that sort of, I hate to
This
say
day
it, but
and
in this
age, we do.
litigious world, you know, that's where we are. So, it's as much backing as we can have, the better.
I have no problem.
My last thing, I guess, would be the operational supplies.
Mm-hmm.
The 5330. You know, we've not spent we've spent less than $2,000 historically. Currently, we're on track to spend less than we'll say 1,500. And we're still budgeting 2,800. Is that something that could be,
The public bathrooms at the harbor were closed for a significant amount of time because of COVID. And you've also got to figure the tour buses weren't coming in and using the bathrooms.
well, I'm looking back to 18 and 19, which had nothing to do with COVID, and looking at 19 and 20, which, you know, half of that might have, you know, the 6 months of 20 had something to do with that. But historically, you're doing 1,500 in non-COVID times. You're doing 1,000 in the beginning of COVID times, and then you've got 1,400 during COVID times. No, excuse me, no, I was the wrong line, sorry, it was the one above that.
You could modestly trim that. I mean, I think, I wouldn't suggest a, you know, right to the,
Right to 2,000.
I mean,
I'd make,
because like everything else, Windex is
Yeah.
10%
I was
higher
gonna
than
say,
it
I don't know
was.
what's gonna
well,
happen to
and
20.
we're,
Right.
and we're, you know, theoretically, we're moving out of that and into
Hopefully,
no, you know, $7 a gallon fuel stages.
right.
So 2,300 maybe?
Yep, sounds good. All right, Eric, anything for you?
Just curious about the sales use tax line. I see there's a little bit there, but
So that's for like the shirts and stuff that they sell down there. We have to pay sales tax on
Oh.
that. So it's been all over the place because one year she didn't order anything for down there because of COVID, and then
oh, so you're just offsetting what's in the
Yeah.
revenue side. So do we have revenue on that for this year?
Merchandise sales.
we don't collect revenue for sales tax.
We don't charge sales tax? Or,
No, we don't collect the revenue. We just pay it.
so the 1,740 for merchandise sales is the offsetting number anyway, right, for that?
Right. So that's what we collect for selling the item.
Anything else, Eric?
Hold on,
Okay,
1 second.
so we're giving back a much.
Okay.
Yeah, it's.
Then it
it's a
really
net
should be
benefit.
220.
That's if we sell everything that
I know.
she buys.
We were budgeting 4,000 for the sales of merchandise, and the line needs to be 220.
Training and education, Do we know of what training? It looks like we historically have been in the 300-ish range.
Yeah,
Not
that
I'm
was my
trying
other
to-
question.
Not that I'm trying to nickel and dime here, though, but I am. We haven't, looks like we haven't spent anything this year. Is there any training that we know is coming up, or?
There's the annual Harbor Masters Conference that takes place this month. And let's see, I don't think we have the cost in here, but, it's like, I think it's $500 per attendee.
Okay. So that might take that up, okay.
Yeah. We also, yeah,
And then public relations merchandise, 5435.
That's the stuff that she buys to sell, the t-shirts, the hats.
Okay, that's the, okay.
So we buy that for 1,500. And then we sell it for 4,400,
Okay,
maybe.
gotcha. That's all I had for questions on there. And thanks again to the Harbor Committee for their increase in revenues.
Yeah, and I feel like having a full-time harbor master who can really focus on, I mean, that is and can be continuing to be a really good moneymaker for the town. I had a question about the park attendants.
uh-oh.
What is? Oh. You thought you were done. And I know you probably explained it in the overview, but I
I took a big bite, I'm sorry. I thought I was done.
so that would be, let's see, line 2220.
You can start, and then I'll.
Yeah.
Okay, so the idea here is to hire two seasonal part-time park attendants for a combined hours of 60 hours a week for a period of 12 weeks. And they would help with weed whacking and mowing and trash removal and docking boats and that type of thing over that period.
Master and then two more people.
So we're making an assumption that they'd be using the vehicle that we're gonna be leaving down there, so they'll be properly
Right.
checked out.
Yeah, and so the other part of this too is we've rented the space out longer, so having someone available and on scene. The other part is that we do have, the dockage was a big issue last year. For dockage is basically people come and they stay at the dock, and it's Hotel Rockport Harbor, not that hotel, but the one in the harbor. That was really, we doubled our budget of, our revenues on that last year. So trying to maximize that aspect to it. And then there's another kind of corollary that they're working on is the idea of working with folks that have moorings and are out and about. This is a plan that I don't know if they're going to be able to get into effect this year, but effectively, let's say you had on your boat and you're headed down to Booth Bay or wherever, subletting effectively those moorings. That's another, just trying to, potential revenue stream that some other, Northeast Harbor, I believe, has this, and there's a couple others that do this. The idea is really to try to, again, just maximize, we can run out of dock space pretty quickly, but having someone who's available and who has that capacity to,
So
be
the-
at the dock, who can, work with someone.
And I think the hope is to have people there later with the events going on. The office isn't closing at 5 o'clock because some of your people coming in on boats, they're not coming in at 5 o'clock. They're
Right.
coming in at
Right.
7.
And then if
8
they leave
o'clock.
it the
And-
next morning, they
Right.
don't even
Right.
pay.
I think the
correctly.
potential the thought was there are people coming in later. And if they're gone after the office, then they can dock and nobody knows
No
they're there, and they
Right.
leave at 4 or 5 in the morning and nobody knows they're there. So if there's people working a little bit later into the evening, there's actually potential to
If we could
generate
make up for
additional
that with
revenue.
revenue, then,
Yeah.
And we have cameras now, right?
Yep.
That's the hope, yes, that's right.
So we would be able to see
So-
that.
And there's a hope, there's a hope
Yeah,
that the revenue
that's good.
offsets some of this. It's also about trying to make the parks and our harbor look
Mm-hmm.
like the way Rockport Harbor should look, and the way it didn't look last year.
Right. And a much more efficient use of people's time than hiring another heavy equipment operator and sending them over to the park.
Right, yeah, I mean, it's
Yeah.
there's challenges we have in terms of safety, you know, you can't hire a 15-year-old kid to go out and weed whack, they're not, no go. MMA won't let us do that, but, you know, college-age kids can absolutely do this work, and, you know, for what that could be, it could be a really
Yeah,
fun
let's
job.
give it a try.
So, you
It'd be
know,
almost like an internship, right? I
It
mean,
could
you're
be.
getting an opportunity to, you know, work for 12 weeks and,
I mean, if you
See
were,
how a harbor works.
if you're a school teacher and you wanted to spend your summer at the harbor,
right?
that'd be pretty great. Not that I'm offering my wife to do this job. I'm just saying she wants to
I'll
walk
send
our
her an
dog
email.
and go to the beach, so that's her thing.
You can do that over there.
That's right.
Yeah, well, she likes to go to Owl's Head and stuff. But anyway, yeah.
All right, Eric, anything else from you?
No.
Denise?
Nope.
Okay, I'm good.
EMA is next, page 207.
Skip one.
Let somebody else start first. You know.
Because you don't have any marks. Or...
Oh, I do, but I'd rather say somebody else has covered it. But
The only thing I had again was training, because it doesn't look like we've done any. It doesn't mean that we're not, but, anything we're aware of.
Nothing for the remainder of this year. I would say that the process of going through the Halloween storm, I think, opened up some cracks that probably we didn't realize existed. And the like, we're going to do some reorganization here in terms of roles. It's this is a place where you don't need it until you need it, and then look out. So while I would probably, on all of these, I think I've said, okay, let's turn it back, because historically we haven't. I would probably ask not to do that in this case, just so that we can go in
case
head,
we need it.
head held high with some more reorganization that may help us out. If if you have to cut it, so be it. But I think that it's a wise investment given.
Well, if we're gonna reorg
FEMA
and, right, given
reimbursement.
FEMA and given opportunities identified in the fall, then perhaps it's more than $750 for training that
Right.
we need.
I was gonna say, you're thinking of, and I know they were trying to do roundtables here in the past. Are we
Yeah.
thinking maybe that could be something
Yeah.
that would fall in there anyway? Because,
Absolutely.
I mean, every time, I think there's been like 2 or 3 that have been scheduled, and I don't think they've ever occurred because COVID hit right at the time, and
Right.
it's like we need to do it, and then boom, we actually were in it, so.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think it'd be a great idea. And actually, I talked with Ray Sisk about that idea about holding a tabletop here, because it really is something that affects not just us in the office mix. So I think that's a very wise.
Denise? Anything on that? Nope. Okay. Eric?
No.
Okay, Mark?
good.
You good?
Public Works is next, page 215.
Okay. All right, who would like to begin?
Yeah, let's just not do any of it, no. I don't know, I think we've pretty much hashed this one all over the place.
All right, I'll jump in. So Megan, the overtime, looks like it's down, it will be down, but is that really just based on plowing?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's hard to really
Right.
And
quantify
we've had
what
a lot
that's
of
gonna
weekend
be based
storms.
upon, yeah, we've had weekend and night storms, so.
And they have the option to take overtime or comp
Comp
time.
time,
So once they exceed their comp time limit, then it's straight overtime after
and
that.
what's that comp time limit? Is it
80 hours.
80 hours, okay.
And they can't keep it, how long?
They have to use it within a year.
Within a year.
In a year, okay.
Now, one part of the reason I trimmed this back to 30 is that there are 3 departments that, by state law, we can exceed the amount approved by the voters because of emergency purposes.
Okay,
So if we decide, if there is an emergency exists, and frankly, 18 storms or 25 storms or 30 storms, it could be any number of different
Right.
number of storms. But if we exceed because
Of an
of use,
emergency.
of legitimate use, then we are able to do that.
Okay.
So obviously, we don't want to, that just merely eats into our unassigned fund balance, but it's one option in this.
As of the end of
circumstance.
February, we spent 28,000.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right, so the other thing I had on my list was the Gov Pilot, and I think that's the software,
Yep.
right?
That's right.
So tell me again what that gets us.
So this section of it is the work order software. So this creates a
No, it's this
a
one.
database of all work to be done. I mean, it basically creates that organizational tool that department head and the other departments that interface with Public Works can feed in to create job tickets and the like.
And what do they use today to do that?
Well, I think it's word of mouth. Mostly, it's phone calls, it's emails, texts.
What about the fix-it?
Report it, fix it.
We do have Report It, Fix It.
Yeah.
This system would dovetail with
that.
Gov Pilots. They also have a system that's identical to that. So you would have one stop for complaints about code issues, as well as for road issues, potholes, the like. So if you've got a problem, that's the place you'll go in the town of Rockport. So it's kind of one-stop shopping for the resident side of it. For our side of it, that will then generate into a work ticket that then would, be transmitted to our staff to complete and repair. How are we are we able to follow up? Where do things, we have 30 days out. Why is this 30 days out? Why are we 60 days out? As we all know, we could go down every road and probably find 15 things that would be worthy of a ticket.
Right.
And probably 14 of them we should be deferring simply because we can't fix every issue. I worry about the 15th that should be dealt with, and we know it should be dealt with, but because we have a multitude of issues, I mean, a multitude, it gets lost. And so I need to have a better sense. I need to help them have a better sense of what the job is, what's the priority list, what are we trying to accomplish, in a given week, which isn't to say things aren't getting done. Things are getting done, but I think we need a better organization behind what it is that we're trying to accomplish week
And
by
so
week,
is
day
there
by day.
back-end reporting? So today, it's word of mouth that someone sends an email, whatever. So I'm
Yeah.
assuming there's no true back-end accountability of you did 50 widgets.
Right.
This would provide us with that?
That's the first layer.
Okay.
The second layer would be if we were to get into an asset management system, which would allow us to say how much we're using for. We can lump payroll into it, but we can talk about, material, whether it's, how much gravel we're gonna bring into a given spot, or, we don't have a lot of our own material to bring to the table, like we had our own pit or whatever that might be, but to be able to track the full breadth of a project, we really don't have that ability yet. This was really the first step towards that, of just trying to account for the job, the priorities, and the organization behind it. So, it's a step. We'll see how successful, it'd be implemented. The thing about the Gov Pilot, the reason why I liked it, is that it can be town-wide. So we can have a situation where, let's say someone comes in, new house, they go to our assistant, planning codes, here's the format, just go on the website, you can fill out the form. If you check the box because you need a new culvert, new driveway culvert, well, that's gonna go automatically to our Public Works Department, and that will be part of a job work order that then will trigger them to have to do it. Now, the process is very manual, very antiquated. It's antiquated. And so we're trying to find ways to make it simple and easy. And I don't think, I think that the more that we can find ways to integrate all these departments, the better. We'll have finance part of it because there'll be pieces of this that will require purchase orders. Have them lumped in. That's been a continual issue that we've been trying to work through, is trying to get timely, submissions of purchase orders, so that way those purchase orders then are tracked and we know funds to be spent in the years to come. I mean, this is, again, I think it's a step. I don't think it's the full extent, but I think it's a step towards where we can go to, hopefully better understand more than just those in the department, but broader sense how we all fit into making public works work,
Well, I think the accountability piece is important for me, because I think that this is the largest piece of our budget. And I'm gonna be honest with you, I get people that ask me all the time, what do people do? Believe me, I know they're fixing roads, they're working hard, but I think there has to be some accountability on what are the things my concern is people using it, right? People stopping the emails, stopping I see someone at the corner store and I need something fixed. We have to direct people on that.
Right.
The other question I had is professional services. So there's $8,000 aligned to professional services.
Which line is it?
Sorry, it is
3095.
3095.
Yep.
What is that? Remind me?
Engineering. So that's hiring
Mechanic Street.
engineering to come in and look at a given road situation. I think we mentioned when we were upstairs talking about Mechanic Street.
So that's where the bulk of that's gonna be spent doing that then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mechanic Street may come out of this year's, road construction budget, but the idea is to move away from that, not spend engineering money out of road construction, spend engineering money out of engineering line, and devote road construction to road construction. So we're actually getting, whatever that number is, we're trying to get as much of that out of that number as we humanly can.
If we're looking to cut things, is the Gov pilot something that could be pushed to next year? I've heard about the sticker price of this budget.
Yeah.
And that have to be done, but does it have to be done this year?
So that's a good question. So the system, the purchase was actually, it's $20,000, and we had set apart all but one module, which was all but $5,000 of it. So basically what we did is we just attributed that quarter of the cost to Public Works. So the package itself is 20. 15 of it is attributed to planning and codes, and 5 is attributed here. But it's one package. It's just trying to attribute where the cost comes from or goes to.
So we either get rid of 20,000 or
Right.
we
Right.
keep the 5 here.
Right.
And isn't this, they were trying to get into Maine and we're getting a deal on this?
Yeah.
As it is?
Yes. Yeah, it was like
Yeah, I went
45,000.
and looked them up online to see what it was all about,
Yeah.
so.
Oh yeah, it's pretty. It's good. I mean, you probably saw like they have 1,000 things you could do,
Yeah, right.
right? We're just trying to find like what are the top 4 that really could help us and get the most bang for the buck, because they're like, oh, we'll give you a module for this and a module for that. Like, yeah. How about we put all those ideas into one module, and then we got 3 more to spend, and that's really how we've been devising this. And Ryan spent a lot of time on that effort.
So again, though, but it does beg the question, that's potentially $20,000 there. That is for a software program that,
It's only as good as
it's
the
only as good as
willing to
people
use
that,
it.
I agree,
I'm a little
I agree.
concerned
And-
about some of the-
Except for, like John said, we have to buy a package to get the planning deal, and this
Right.
is part of that package.
Right.
Right, so I mean, we would
So
have to make a
either-
decision on
right.
all or nothing. Like, we'd
Right.
have to say,
Right, we're not
we
gonna.
don't do it for planning, we don't do it
Right.
for public works.
Right.
Yeah,
And planning involves online inspections. That involves really remaking, taking the 20-year-old access database that we currently have for planning and codes and continuing to use that with the new hire. And part of the new hire's job is really to try to move toward digitization. So everything's in that system.
So, I mean, there's a great deal on everyone's plate next year. Let's just use the vehicle locator system, I mean, you have to work with everybody.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to have a policy in place about its usage or not disabling it. And everybody has to sign off on that. So you've got a lot for people to swallow already. And then you're going to also do the Gov pilot thing.
Right.
You know,
My thought is we can't afford not to. That's what so much of this is
Yeah,
that
when I
we
hear
talked
the
about it.
digitization of the
Yeah.
planning and code enforcement and
Right.
getting those online inspections and
Right.
keeping that process moving.
Right.
I know that the Fix-It, or Report It, Fix-It,
Mhm.
I don't know what we paid for that, but
Yeah.
that stuff just went into
Hasn't
a
worked.
black hole.
well,
Yeah.
no, well, it hasn't worked because
People haven't
Because
used
we-
it.
there was nobody monitoring the,
Right.
people
Right.
haven't owned it.
I used it once.
No, we use it.
I did too.
We use
A
it,
lot of us
right.
use it, but it goes in, nobody on the other end
It was
is.
a
Right.
black hole.
Yeah.
And that's right. And these are the tools. These are the tools that are needed to get accountability. I mean, to Michelle's point, you have to. These are. I look at these tools as not just they're tools for the department. These are tools that I can create, manage. I can create standards, and I can create, a very clear representation of what's expected.
expectations.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
with
And we have
these
not
tools.
had, I mean, and let me be honest, we have not had that. So
Yes.
I don't like the fact that we have to put vehicle locators on vehicles, but I think there's some things that make us question, and it makes us, that it's a necessity. So it's
Yeah.
difficult to stand in front of someone and say, yes, they're all departments are doing everything they can at every time and supporting you when maybe there's questions about that. And this helps to resolve some of those,
So,
but it's a lot of money.
It is. It is.
question on, this is going up to the top of the page, 2120. I mean, we're treating everybody else at 6%. Is there a reason that's only at 3?
It's a union position.
Yeah.
Union position,
Yeah.
all right. Yep, good.
And I don't think I mentioned this, but I should mention this again. The 2 union contracts will be up in next year's budget.
Yes.
So
Yep.
whatever we're talking about in terms of whatever that COLA conversation is, I guarantee that we will have further conversations with our friends in labor, organized labor.
And when you do your survey, you'll have ammunition to
Well, there you go.
throw in front of them,
Right.
either good, bad, or indifferent.
Right.
The telephone, the 3320, again, I mean, I'm thinking 3,000 rather than 3,400 if you look at historically. I mean, it's been close to 3,000, but it's never been over. And even if you doubled this year, it's 27. It's $400, who cares? Buildings and repairs was another one.
Yeah, what is that 11,000 for?
Yeah, what's the 8,700 we're gonna spend in the remainder of this year? And what are we planning on fixing next year for another 11?
So they gotta do the boiler out of this year. They gotta replace that whole system, but they were waiting until winter was over to replace it.
So they're gonna do it out of this year's budget. Do we know what that amount is?
Hopefully no more than 8,700.
Hopefully not.
It was around there or a little bit more, cause they have some special system that uses recycled diesel or something.
Yep.
Okay.
That's right.
Oil, I don't,
Yeah.
oil.
So what is the
Uses
plan,
recycled
what's the
oil.
11,000 for next year?
Right. What are the plans for building repairs and maintenance?
I looked at that in the historical nature of it, in that they've spent 92 and 10,000 over the last 2 years. With the boiler, you're going to be at or over
I mean,
11.
one of them was a roof they did a couple of years ago.
Right. But
So I'm,
yeah, go for it.
the exhaust systems have been put in, but that's been paid for. I guess,
So they're putting a generator in, so that's gonna require electrical work. And then
Have they bought the generator?
it's in here.
Oh, it is, okay. But that's not part of it?
That would be part of
Okay.
this. I mean, this is probably the most neglected building in the whole town. So I hesitate. Part of all of these, we'll talk about town office and public safety building, but that's a concern I have. I don't have an answer. I mean, to to Mark's point, you know, what does it go to? I don't know, but I feel as though that given whatever has been deferred to date, the sewer line goes,
Right.
I feel like we're kind of in that world with these buildings right
But you
now.
know what you're gonna do to yours,
Yeah,
and I'm assuming Jason and Randy know what they're gonna do to theirs. Abby knows what they're gonna do, so I guess,
yeah.
Just need to know what it's planned for.
yeah,
I
what are
guess.
the plans?
Well,
What,
right, but I guess my point is we didn't plan for the sewer line either.
yeah.
That's what, I guess what, that's, I mean, that's kind of where I'd like to get us to a point where we have reserves so that when those issues crop up, we can make this line be like, you know, a much more modest line, and we have that reserve available when the world breaks, you know, but unfortunately, right now, we're living in this world where we go by the maintenance line because we're right here, and this isn't the year to do that, so, my thought was, let's live in this world for right now, and a year, 2, 3, we get down the road, we can maybe take a different approach. That'd be my hope.
Where did I see,
What's the, oh, sorry.
I was gonna say roadway painting isn't, I think that was when Doug wanted his white fog lines. Where is somewhere in here, there was money for, parking, you know, spaces and like traffic, street signs and traffic paint, 5380.
Right.
You know, we shouldn't have to budget 5,000, because there's still money in there to buy paint that didn't get spent last year.
Right. Right.
Because there was no paint.
That's because we couldn't buy it.
Hmm?
That's because we couldn't buy it.
Right, but there's still money there to buy it for this
This
year,
year.
This year, out of this year's budget.
out of what's already budgeted.
But then we won't have it for next year if we take it out. You know what I mean?
Well, if we buy the paint now, or whenever we can,
Under this
wouldn't
budget.
we
Right.
have,
We used last
if we
year's
did it in
money
this
for
budget, we'd use that paint technically in next year's budget.
I mean, it never gets done. It never gets done until after
Well,
Memorial Day anyway.
It's always May because you gotta, you know, you clean out the catch basins and then you have the, you know, the swipe,
Yeah.
you know, sweeping and, you know, it's always right before Memorial Day for the parade.
Yeah.
That's how it works.
Alright, so, oh, sorry, I had one more thing on this page.
Mm-hmm.
So vehicle locator, is it $840 per vehicle? Is that what it comes
I
out
just
to be?
looked, it was 14,000 something total. I just looked at
Between
it.
them all.
Okay,
Yeah, because I had the same thought, $14,060 for
Okay.
everything.
This includes the location devices and the outgoing dash cameras.
okay, dash and
And
location.
the dash cameras were $5 per unit,
So that's
was
the
it?
8,600 there, right?
Was it
Okay.
5 per unit? I think it was. I mean, it's, you know, you're talking at a bigger number here, but, I mean, this is, if there was one department, this is the most important, and it's not, I know,
No,
there's.
no, I agree, I just didn't know what made up that
Yeah.
So-
8,600, I was trying to figure out what the pricing
The
was.
location devices are $18.95 a month, and the camera devices are $24.95 a month.
Okay,
Right, so, yeah, $5 difference, yeah.
okay. No, I'm not concerned with it, I think we need them, I just didn't know how it broke out.
This also includes equipment tags for the mowers, the excavator, and the backhoe.
Okay, I like that idea. That ensures that town
Don't wander off.
maintenance is
And
done
those
with
items, so there's two
mean I'm
mowers,
not taking it
and
and
then
mowing
the
my-
two big
my-
heavy
my weeds?
equipment, so that's 4 more items at $12.95
Okay.
a month.
And then I was questioning, I thought there was a duplicate in here for vehicle. Yeah, so there's 3210 vehicle repairs and maintenance. We have 20,000 allotted there. And then we have 5815 vehicle maintenance parts and supplies, and we have 42,000 in there.
So 3210 is where we have to pay somebody else to do the work. We can't handle the work in-house.
And what are some of those things?
Newer vehicles that have the computer systems in them, we can't always reprogram them and do the work that needs to be done. If there's big repair, like an engine repair or something, that's not something that we
Okay,
would do.
all right.
The
And then-
50 whatever,
5815?
yep, is work that Public Works would do themselves.
And
Okay.
that's just the parts and
Right.
supplies, that's not their
Right.
labor.
Okay. Okay. So then my other concern is this really big, big number, 7605, road construction and paving.
Sorry, I don't see that.
Because you crossed it out?
Well, let me be the bad guy in the room and start out and say I'd lower it back to 500,000. I realize we need it. We all know what the price of oil's doing. You know, we can budget it, and if we don't spend it or don't want to spend it, we can encumber some and maybe bump it into next year when prices might be less. But
I don't disagree we need it. I absolutely don't. My question is, can we honestly, based on historical of what we've been able to do with the staff that we have, could we even accomplish that? Or am I just basically asking us to bank
I mean, when I
Well-
first,
200, 300,000 on a maybe?
So the bulk, the answer is the bulk of this money is not going to Town of Rockport. The bulk of this money is being written to Pike Industries, Hager Enterprises, Discount Paving. This isn't even, this is paving budget money, right?
Right.
This is going to someone else. The rest of this budget, where wages, equipment, that's where I think where we're under pressure to be able to meet that need, to be able to prepare the roads for paving. What we can accomplish would have to be put out to bid. So there's that aspect to it, which you obviously then you've got profit margin that you have to build in, and that's going to cost us whatever that amount that the contractor has to make that we're not going to get in the product. The issue that to maybe bounce between the two thoughts. This number is less about what we are accomplishing this year, and it's more about building a building block for the budget for years to come. I worry less about, and it sounds crazy to say, we're in the middle of talking about this budget and what's going to happen in that number, and there's going to be a tax bill that's generated from, these numbers. But part of the issue that we've had in Rockport is that rather than building off of something, it's been too difficult to capture the enormity of the problem. And so what we have is, we really have a cost of 1.2 million to really deal with these roads. It's really 1.2, almost, 1.2
I
million.
remember that speech from the other night.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to,
Right. But what I'm saying to you is, if you take this out, we're gonna come back and have the same conversation next year.
And it might be a better year.
It might be a better year,
Right.
but you can encumber so the encumbering of the money is money you've already dedicated to the purpose. It's not helping you build the budget for next year. It's merely already money you already dedicated to that need. If you build a budget based upon this and you encumber 800,000 and you only accomplish 4, then you can encumber that money forward. But what I've been trying to get across in all these sort of conversations is our need's 800,000. We can cut up a whole bunch of different ways. We can say it's 800 this year. We could say it's 400 this year, and then 1,200 next year. But that's like the baseline. It's not the shooting. It's not the target. It's the baseline. And so if we don't meet the baseline, our future costs have now gotten larger. And admittedly, everything in Ukraine and our oil prices, I completely agree. Doesn't mean we have to spend it. I would spend it, but it doesn't mean you have to spend it. You could spend it in ways that are less oil intensive, less about paving, more about ditching, more about tree cutting, more about maintenance of culverts and ditching, there's other ways to get to this number. It could be merely the replacement of doing the remainder of the West Street Extension culvert. That's not something that would be heavily oil intensive and probably wouldn't be tremendously different in terms of cost. But if we fall short of this number, I think we're going to be regretting it. And I think falling short of 800,000, let's say it's 5 or it's 6, the cost that we're delaying isn't 6 next year or another 3 next year or whatever it is. It's 3 plus whatever further damage to that road has occurred. So 3 becomes 450, becomes 5.
So,
And so that's why I say I would worry less about interest rates and I'd worry more about trying to get ahead of that number,
so what,
if you can.
I mean, what you're looking at, I mean, with oil going up 50%, you know, your 425,000 last year equates to 650 this year to get the same amount of work done. So you're not gonna get a great deal of work done for the amount of money you're spending. So to Denise's point, or anybody else, I don't, I mean, could we encumber some and then perhaps increase next year's work? You know, if ifs and buts for candies and nuts,
Right.
you know,
Right.
we would have better petroleum prices to make the product to do more work. But this is a heck of a budget, and, you know,
This is, right.
I agree it needs
Adds
to
a
be
lot.
done,
I completely agree.
but I'm just, you know,
You could create a reserve. That's the only, I mean, that's really what I would rather do. I'd rather have this as a reserve number. So that way you put the same amount aside every year and you spend it when it makes sense logistically, rather than saying, and the amount you're putting aside is based upon what the cost is, rather than, well, we've got to spend 788 this year, we got to spend 788 next year. You spend it based upon when it's wise. You know, so if it doesn't make sense to spend, it only makes sense to spend $700, excuse me, 500,000, then you still have 288 that you're spending, you're saving for that day when it makes more sense to spend that money.
but that goes to the point that somebody had made earlier, we
Yeah.
can't, there's only so much we can do. I mean, when I
Right.
saw the 8,000 for professional services, I thought it was gonna be great. You were gonna hire Steve Beveridge to come in the summertime to help, because he is the expert paver,
Right.
but that wasn't the case.
No,
So-
but I would say, what I would say is, regardless of who it is, I mean, first of all, I'm the road commissioner. So if there's anybody responsible for the roads, it's me.
No, I know
Right?
that.
Oh, yes.
Second of all, the need for us on this line is independent of who. It's dependent upon what our need is as having 72 miles of road. Whether we think it can be done or has it been done, that need exists. And as we showed with the need in terms of what current condition is, it's a $5 million cost over 3 years. So I think you asked the question, Mark, upstairs, like, can we get it done? If we can't get it done, then we need to have we need to have a public works department shaped so we can get it done, so that we can meet a 10-year cycle. Right now, we're on a cycle to be like 25 years. If we're on a 25-year cycle, I don't want to be here to answer the phone in year 15. None of us should want that. You know, we have subdivision roads we've never paved. Never.
No, I know.
You know, and it's like, oh, well, someday we'll deal with it. We deal with the high traffic roads. So Park Street's peeling up right now as part of the infrastructure bond from 4 years ago, 5 years ago. We didn't do a good enough job on that. And telling these people on all these roads that we just have to put it off because Park Street's tearing apart. We can't do both. We have to do all the roads, but we can't deal with just Park Street and ignore everything else, because then that subdivision road that people perhaps didn't want to take on becomes a full rebuild. And when it becomes a full rebuild, then it's not 100,000 to pave it. It's 250, 350,000.
and-
That's what I worry
And,
about.
and I understand that the roads need to be done.
Yeah.
But I mean, we're asking for full-time positions in this budget that aren't there.
Right.
We're trying to create part-time into full-time,
Right.
and there's a lot of, there's a lot.
There is.
We've got to lean in somewhere, I think. I mean,
And, I
it's
mean,
hard, it's absolutely hard.
It's
But we've
not,
been making some choices, I think, or thanks to you, where we're really investing in the future in terms of the planning.
right, no, and I agree, and that's
That's
stuff
where-
that has been put off in the past, just because it was the easy way to do it,
right,
and nobody had to be the bad guy.
right.
And you're providing us with numbers that are factual. This is what needs to be done to be kept,
Right.
to keep up.
Right.
Right.
But is there an 80-20, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and
Mm-hmm.
that's, believe me, we want more than nothing, than anything else to get this done and get us back into a good position. But we also need to be mindful of people who need to pay for this too, our taxpayers.
Did I see you have, did you have your hand up?
No,
No, I'm just trying to engage you a little bit.
so I mean, I don't know if we'll make a decision on this tonight. I know there's a couple numbers, Mark, you threw out
I
five.
just threw as a starting point 5. I mean, you know, if you look at
Which is
where
more
oil,
than we've
Which
allocated
is more than we've
before.
done, right?
but if you look at where oil is and what last year's price was, you've gotta have 50% more of what we spent
Right.
last year to make up for what we did last year, so that would be
Right.
a $650,000 number roughly.
Well, what if we
What
put
do we
in
have-
for,
What do we have left on the bond?
420, no. on
Did
the
we get
bond?
all the work done under the bond?
No.
So what's left on that for this year?
Well, we haven't completed all the projects we're supposed to get completed of the bond either. So the sidewalk project on Main Street isn't completed. There was the paving for the harbor wasn't completed. We cut back on the Rockland Street project before I got there in terms of the sidewalk there. So there was a handful of projects that didn't make the list. In addition, there's
That we have still bond money for, or we used all the bond money up,
We-
but we didn't do everything we said we were gonna do?
we haven't used all the bond money up. The question is how much, now that the pier is done, how much do we have left over, and what can we reasonably accomplish with what's left?
And
know?
that paving aspect was out to bid, right? Mm-hmm. So they're already locked in at that price.
Well, it was a last year number, so you can
Well, I
sometimes
mean,
convince them to come back, but I can't imagine
doubt
they're
it.
coming
Well,
back.
no,
at this point.
that's where I'm going.
You
It's
know,
like,
Right.
you know,
yeah.
So
could we
again-
or can't we, but.
Yeah.
so Megan, if we plugged in,
Yeah.
if we plugged in, let's just say 600, just, I'm not saying that's where we're landing, but if we plug that in, like how does that impact us bottom line? And I can't see that, so you're gonna have to read it.
27%, 1.1.
Okay.
That's the.
Might as well.
that's
We're
the
not
budget
talking.
Increase is 27% rather than 30.
Well, 26.95, so.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
Jeff,
Since Mark asked,
Yeah, no, listen,
I'll weigh in. I think that maintaining roads and infrastructure is an absolute core part of government, and it's essential that we continue to invest into our roads and our infrastructure. But I'm gonna go a step further and not suggest that we add a position, but I will share that I have concerns about us removing a position from Public Works and putting them elsewhere, given that we're already hearing that Public Works doesn't have time to empty trash cans, and we're relying on staff to mow lawns and weed whack. That concerns me, that we're falling behind on maintaining our infrastructure, and we're removing a person from this budget to go elsewhere. So I guess I might be advocating that we keep our staffing where it is, and that we also consider keeping our paving budget where we have it budgeted. That's probably not what you wanted to hear, but you asked.
no, listen, I'm good. I mean, if I thought I could find another $188,000 somewhere in this, I'd put it back up to $788 instead of 600, because it does need to be done.
So,
At your point about the diminishing returns given the cost of oil, that was it.
so let me give you just, because this is the biggest nut in the whole, in the whole
absolutely,
budget
right.
crack, right? So let me just walk you down a road that is a little bit, it's kind of where Mark is going, you know, in terms of the building. So at some point, though, if the voters approve, there'll be a West Rockport Fire Station, which will have a bond payment about $150,000, right? About 150? Yeah. So we also have the fire and EMS, right, that has been talked about. And this is, you know, just kind of not quite napkin. There's been some work put into this, but the idea of a 3-town solution, that's about $10 million. A $10 million solution for 3 towns. Now, we have our EMS situation, and until that's real, I don't think we spend a lot of time on that. But we know we're going to have an issue on the fire EMS side at some point. We're not going to have enough volunteers, and we're going to have to pay people to do it. Whether the $10 million solution is real or not real, we have a very real situation we're going to deal with in the next 2-3 years, whether we want to or not. If we can get through the full agreement with Northeast, great. If we can, maybe not. And I don't know what that cost is, but when we start having to pay shifts of shifts of firefighters, paramedics, that's the number I'm scared of. This number, I know what it is. I know how we get it. I know where we're going with it. If we meet a number, and I'm not saying 78 or 6 or whatever, that's not my point. My point is that what's looming in the future is something that is really changes the whole shape of how Rockport Town government is funded. That's what worries me. It's an unknown to me at this point. And so if we're going there, and that's 3 years, 5 years, I don't know, maybe it never happens, but I think something happens. I don't want to get into a situation where we have to confront that crisis and we still haven't confronted the roads crisis at the same time. Because that's when we end up in a situation where I feel as though then we're talking about the city of Rockland, where we can't meet our infrastructure needs, our mill rate is over 25, and everyone's unionized. That's what I'm trying to avoid. So I certainly understand where we are, right? I completely get it. The number, this is my proposal. It's your budget at this point, and you do it, you need to do your best and understand who can pay and who can't pay. And there's only so much we can do in a year. I understand that. But I want you to understand we can't kick the can. We have to be careful, because I think there's a cliff that's just on the other side, that's not too far away, that's going to put us in a position where we're not going to be able. It's not going to be it's not going to be a little bit. It's going to make this budget look like child's play. That's what I worry about. That's what keeps me up at night.
So listen,
This did, but I worry about what's coming next. You know what I mean? That's where I'm scared for all
I
of us.
alluded to this question somewhere in one of our other meetings.
Yeah.
How much in this budget won't be in next year's budget because we've taken care of
Yeah.
those infrastructure things?
There's a lot of it that is.
So, I mean, basically, we're looking at the same number. I mean, you
Yeah.
don't have a crystal
Except
ball,
for
but
they're just gonna be replaced with other items. I mean, you've seen the capital improvement plan, all the stuff that's on
Right,
there.
it's all has to be
While they
done.
might not be in here this year and that stuff comes out, they're gonna
They'll
be
be in
replaced
there,
next year with
right.
something different.
We need a new normal, is what this budget is.
Well-
It's normal's not fun. I'm not
Right.
saying it is.
And it's such a drastic increase to get us to normal.
Right.
That's the
Right.
challenge I think we're all facing and
Right.
running into, is that it is such a big increase to get us to what we think is normal.
I totally agree.
And
Totally agree.
that's the challenge I think we all face as
Yes.
taxpayers, as
Right.
people representing taxpayers, that to go to the taxpayer and say we have a 30% increase,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
it's a shock.
It is.
But we also have to,
Is there some way to step that
right,
a little bit?
I mean, it's 10. It's under 10
Well-
because that's what while, I know, we talk about municipal, and usually I talk about municipal.
I know.
But the,
The end of the day, what we are, right.
we're gonna get a call, all of us are gonna get calls based upon what that bill says.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
like, I emailed you all and I said, what does this mean? If so, for your average $300,000 house, as proposed, you're looking at $300. That's going from a $5,900 tax bill to a 60, well, it's almost 6,000, but basically almost 6,000 to almost 6,300.
If your value hasn't increased.
If you're that,
Right,
right,
that's-
just because we don't know.
Right.
And usually when you have adjustments, a third go up, a third go down, a third stay the same. So we don't know what happens with the values. It's too hard to do that in the middle of the budget to try to
But that's
figure that
where,
out.
that's where Kerry alluded to when I asked him the other day, where is the bracket that took the biggest hit? And he
Middle.
said 250 to 5.
Yep,
Right.
So if that's the
That's me.
case, well, yeah, no, but if that's the case, all of your $300,000 that you're talking about don't even exist.
well,
I mean-
it's just
No,
to
they've
get you a
become-
number.
They've become
Right,
500,000.
they become
Right.
500.
Right.
Yeah, no,
It just gets you a number, right?
Yep.
Right.
You know, so I,
Megan, can you blow
I
that
get
up
it.
a little bit? I'm sorry, I just can't see it. And I,
885 is where we're at,
I wondered, so
8.85%.
I know you tried to explain the revenue sharing to me before, but as I look at what we're on track
Mm-hmm.
for this year, it's looking really good.
Yep,
I mean, we're almost at the end of 7 months. That's on page 77.
okay.
At the end of 7 months of this year, so at the end of January, you know, we're almost where we were at the end of 12 months last year. And I know it looks like February and March.
So I'd be looking at about a $2,000 increase in my tax bill.
So we are not in a position that we can estimate
Assuming
revenue
3
sharing.
to 5.
So we
Right.
rely on the state
Yeah.
to do that. The state issues this report, which I don't know how much I'm gonna be able to blow it up, because
Okay,
It's
so
not
this
easy
shows
to
for
see.
the next,
Last year I paid 15,
so they
900.
estimate our future at 463. So
And is
that's
that-
how we got the number that's in the budget.
okay, and so that is reflected in the budget already.
That's right.
Right. We just don't have the data that they have to be able to estimate what that payment is gonna be. So we have to rely on their information.
Right.
And their information right now is extremely preliminary. So come September or August, when Carrie does the commitment, that number could drastically go up
Could
or
be-
down, and we really
And we
wouldn't have
to
any
live with
idea until
whatever it
then.
is.
Having said that, the receipts of the state are up,
Yeah.
and they continue to be up.
Yeah,
And in
but-
fact, that, you know, she's talked about different things that the governor wants to do, but, you know, that's a good sign for us. Continues to be a good sign.
Right, I mean, we need to see that all the way through, I guess.
Right.
John, I appreciate the whole new normal that you are trying to prepare us for, and it seems a little scary going forward. And we're talking about staggering things over time. I think if we're going to do the roads to get them back up to the baseline, then we also have to put employee wages back on the table and employee increases in health insurance. And I'm curious, my personal, see what the increase in health insurance, what percentage of the budget that takes out.
I don't know if we've ever
But
pulled
it was
that out.
250,000.
Yes.
It was 250,000 between the new positions that we added, the adjustments, and the cost of living adjustments and the health insurance adjustments.
So about a quarter to a
Wage.
fifth, about a quarter to a fifth of the increase.
Okay.
So that covered the 80 to 90%,
The
okay,
FSA
and the 6% raise.
Right. Yeah.
And that's why all those little $500 things here and there make a difference.
they do, I know.
You know,
It seems like
here we
we're
are at the
nickel
2 million.
diming,
A
but
lot of
we're,
little ones.
$2 million budget,
Yeah.
and we're
right,
scratching to find 200,000.
Right.
right.
I mean, is there I guess the part of the question, because what ends up usually happening in a lot of cases in budgets, we get to this point, and maybe you want to go through the rest of everything, but you kind of do everything, and then you kind of come back around, right? And like,
Right.
okay, well, now what, right?
Yeah.
And if there is like an overall number that feels like the number, then maybe that's something to talk about, to say, okay, well, this is what we feel like we can we can talk about in terms of a plan, what can we reasonably afford, you know, and what that is, because,
And
that's.
then leave that to you to decide where, because we don't always know what,
The priority,
yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
we
I
know
mean-
some of that, but
because it's very much a cost. I mean, like Eric, you've got your situation. I ran my numbers. I mean, we all kind of have figured out what is the number for us, but you know, the big number, the overall number, what does that look like? What can we sit up there at town meeting and feel like we did our best, you know?
And I'm a little bothered, I mean, I get that you're shifting us to the new normal, but why do the taxpayers for the fiscal year 22, 23 all of a sudden have to be bombarded with everything nobody did before?
for years.
What in this?
I get it.
What
I'm
in,
just,
I understand, yeah.
what in this could be stepped? So like maybe 50% this year and 50% next, or 33, 33, 33 to get us
Yeah.
up in a more,
Not
less
of this,
drastic.
Right,
Right.
more gradual climb.
Well, I mean, if you look at, the employee, so there's a couple things here. We haven't done anything with UFB, right? So that's a big number that we haven't touched at all. We talked about why I don't recommend using a lot of it, but we also talked about a number that you could use that
Right.
I would be more comfortable and more supportive of the idea of if we were saying, we'll use this number, but our goal is to here. And the same, we're doing that with roads. This is what we can spend, but our goal is to here, you know? We can't get there in a day.
I
No
mean,
way.
So,
You know what I mean?
If you were trying to step up over 3 years, for instance.
Yeah,
And instead of potentially using 312 out of UAB,
Mm-hmm.
you did 200 this year, and then 200 next year out of it, and 200 the year after.
Mm-hmm.
So each year you're using a little bit of it instead of a lot the first
Exactly.
year.
right, right.
But you're also, you've got a little less of an
Right.
You know, it's
The
not such
ramp
a
is-
street, right, you're ramping up,
Right, right.
and, you know,
It's not, as you said, this is unfair. All of us, we can
Right.
all kind of link arms and say, this is not great.
Right.
And we shouldn't be in this spot.
well.
And the taxpayers shouldn't be in this spot, oh, by the way.
We tried to make things comfortable over the years that
Yeah.
I've been here.
Sure.
And unfortunately, it's gotten to the point where it's gonna be uncomfortable.
Right.
And that goes back boards and boards and boards.
Back to when I was sitting
so
up
I
there.
think of things
Sure.
like, family coverage being still at 80% and individual at 90. I mean, I know that, but that's gonna be more than some of the $5,000 we're talking about.
Right,
As ways that we reward our employees with health insurance, but that, since not every employee is part of a family, then we're sort of treating our employees a little more equitably by focusing on the individual coverage.
yeah.
Why are we bumping the family side to 90? Do we
Because
have
they're-
Comparable to every other town, they do all that? I mean, are we sure that they do? Because in my other board, it
They
isn't.
don't.
There is actually on a listserv that I'm on right now, there's an active benefits survey going around. And it's surprising how many municipalities offer 90% coverage and cover 100% deductible, whether it's through an HSA or an FSA. And they're essentially making the employees whole for the cost of that coverage. I've been surprised how many I've seen are at that level. Some are even more than that. Some are offering a higher deductible plan, covering the cost of the plan and covering the cost of the deductible.
Wow.
So, I mean, that's what we're up against.
And sometimes that actually, you know, if you've got a maximum out of pocket of $6,000, rather than paying $26,000 for the health cover, I mean, other,
Alright.
my law firm, I mean, it made more sense to cover the deductible and go to a high deductible policy. But, you know, that, we're really getting in the weeds on
All right,
how we manage that. But
back to the paving thing again, just so we can.
Yes, let's
Sorry.
finish this
bit.
one
I
up.
mean, listen, I'm okay if we bumped it to 650. And, I mean, I don't mean that lightly, but I mean,
Yeah.
those dollars are gonna get you what you paid last year for 425
That's right.
with the way petroleum is. So we're not gonna be going behind in that respect.
What do you think about having it as a reserve, though? That way, regardless
what
of
as
when
a-
the year is,
I'm
you
trying to
spend it where it
remember.
makes sense.
Go for
trying
the
to
full
remember.
788 and put some in reserve and some,
Well, I'll let you guys work about the number, but my thought is, if it's a reserve, we don't encumber, it just sits there, and we spend it when it makes the most sense.
so the 650
So
is a
instead of
reserve.
putting the 650 into that line, stick it in a reserve, and then as the contracts come up, we just approve them out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's
I'm,
fine.
I'm trying to, I think it was, again, Ken McKinley who said he didn't like reserves.
yes, yes,
You know, and it,
I get it.
Yeah, but on a line item this large, it makes the most sense. I mean, the reserves
Yeah,
of
more
a
control over
$5,000 item doesn't make sense to me, but
so
a million something does.
another question.
650.
Well, I know, but a million,
Right.
I mean, what's the drop dead time that you would go out to bid for this type of work?
Well, we went out to bid when I was here, so, last year. I think, so the trick is how, okay, let's think about that.
The longer you wait, the potentially, the better the price might be.
Right,
Maybe.
right.
True.
We,
No, I know.
I think we,
Yeah.
theoretically, this should be a short-term blip.
yeah, I think we put paving out 1st of August, I think. You know, you can always go out multiple times too. I mean, there's no
Yeah, if you don't like
shame
what you
in,
got.
oh, we reject all
Yeah.
bids, you know, okay, we, you know, yeah, August, late August, because you're not gonna get anything done until, you know, at late, you know, we paved, we paved Mount Pleasant a week before the storm, so, you know, I mean,
Right.
And that money just went down the drain.
Literally.
yeah, really, I know.
Okay, I'm tired.
I mean, if
Yes.
we did it,
Gonna call it.
Thank you.
the other thing is that if we'd have to come back for the expenditure out of a reserve, in terms of how the reserve policy is written.
Right.
So we'd have to come back, so you'd have kind of your bite at the apple to say, yeah, it makes sense to do this or not. So,
I kind of like that, to be honest with you.
you know,
I
then
mean,
you know what's
right,
coming at
right.
you, you
Then
know,
we
what
know
you're
what's
spending.
coming and what we're spending. I
Right.
agree.
I mean, there's always that, hey, we gotta do this because of this,
Well, right,
But-
and there's, right.
within, but I think, you know,
Those kind of
roads,
dollars, that's good to have. more
So can
control.
we, make an agreement on a number? At least, I mean, obviously, we'll revisit this before the end, but is it
I'm
six
okay with the
fifty?
650.
I'll throw 650 out there.
650 and in a reserve?
No, oh, you mean, I thought we were gonna have 650 in there to spend
No,
and
put
not
it
be
all
in a reserve. I mean, you gotta do something. You can't keep it in a reserve forever.
No,
No,
but it
it'll
goes
come
into the
to us.
reserve,
No.
and as the
Come to us.
contracts come up, we pull it. We
right,
approve it and move it.
Which John
And just
thinks is a
instead of an
better way.
expense line, that way it doesn't get, whatever doesn't get spent doesn't get dropped into UFB, and then we have to reverse it and all this
Right.
other nonsense, or you have to encumber it
Exactly.
and go through all that process. The
Right, it's
reserve just
available
locks it
for
into
me.
that line
Perfect.
permanently.
All right. Any other comments, not that we can't revisit it, but any other comments for Public Works?
So just to be clear, we're doing 650 in reserve, correct?
Correct.
That's what we're,
Yes. At this point, yes. Since it is 9:10, I would like to make a recommendation that we close shop for this evening.
I second that.
With what little adjustments have been made so far, where do we stand?
I'm gonna guess 8.2. What do you think?
9.1, increasing that to 650.
Oh, wait, 'cause we put 5.
9.1? Okay. All right, so we will be back together Wednesday evening, I believe.
Yep.
Yep, that's right.
Okay. Wednesday evening, we will be back. We will revisit any outstanding questions, and then we will start on what, Megan?
Sanitation,
Sanitation.
Sanitation.
no better place.
6 o'clock here.
Yes, 6 o'clock here.
Oops, that means oh wait,
All right,
I have 2 meetings on Wednesday
call it a night. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Talk to you on Wednesday.
Oh, no, I have one on Tuesday. Tomorrow, my other one's tomorrow.
We're doing a photo.
It's on
Oh,
Tuesday
we're doing
now.
a photo?
Oh.
Not now, it's too late.
Yeah,
Do you wanna do it